Chapter 435. He transferred to another flying artifact that was on alert. The items in his storage bag had already been sorted out. After listening to the report, Yu Qianqiu realized that there were very few valuable things. The total number of spirit stones was less than 70 million high-grade spirit stones. Just the storage bag that contained the treasure chest alone had close to 60 million. In other words, the other storage bags didn't even add up to 10 million. Yu Qianqiu was a little depressed. It turned out that there weren't many rich people in the cultivation world. Seeing Ziyi hiding in a corner and guarding the chest with her head lowered in deep thought, he walked over and asked, "Which two countries are missing inside?" Ziyi just realized that he was back and said with some embarrassment, "There's no one in China, but I can't remember which country it is." "Don't make things difficult for yourself if you can't remember." Yu Qianqiu comforted her. Actually, he also knew that there were more than 300 countries. Perhaps everyone knew the names, but not many people could name them one by one. However, there was one thing without a doubt. Although the map of China wasn't in the chest, the things inside were definitely not made by the people of China's cultivation world. It seemed like he had to check the foreign cultivators and find out which countries' important people had died in this battle. Ordinary people wouldn't carry such a storage bag. After putting the chest away, Yu Qianqiu returned to his flying artifact and gave the order to set off. Their target was the Wu family of the four major families. After the various sects saw the four flying artifacts leave, they quickly sent the news of Yu Qianqiu leaving the Cultivation Alliance back to their sections. Then they went back to their own matters. After all, the most important thing at the moment was the battle with Wuxia Island. The only thing that everyone was concerned about was what the Daoyuo sect would do to Yu Qianqiu. No sect would let over 1,000 people die in vain. The four major families had already received the news that Yu Qianqiu was coming. The four family heads gathered at the Wu family. It was not convenient for Yu Qianqiu to teleport here with Ziyi, so he could only fly over. When they were not far from the Wu family, they found a secluded mountain and sent Purple Robe away. They temporarily sent the 400-odd team members back to Utopia and put away the four flying magical artifacts. Then they gathered some firewood and piled it up. When Ziyi came back with two wild animals that Yu Qianqiu wanted to eat, she realized that the flying artifact and the people were gone. She asked curiously, "Where did they go?" Yu Qianqiu took the two pheasants and came to a small stream. He removed their feathers and gutted them. As he washed them, he told Ziyi, "I'll dismiss them first. I'll gather them again when I need them. Otherwise, I would have to pay a large sum of money to them every day. I can't take it." After all, Ziyi had been out for a long time. Her way of thinking was more or less enlightened. She wasn't as easy to guess as she used to be. After looking around, she said doubtfully, "I wasn't far from here just now. Why didn't I notice anything when so many people left?" "They have their own stealth methods. Ordinary people can't discover them," Yu Qianqiu said perfunctorily. This explanation was a little far-fetched. With Ziyi's cultivation, it was impossible for her not to notice such a huge commotion. Ziyi's pretty face turned cold. She asked unhappily, "Yu Qianqiu, are you hiding many things from me?" "What can I hide from you? What benefits do I get from hiding them from you?" Yu Qianqiu said without revealing any flaws. He carried the two bare-chested pheasants and walked to the pile of firewood that he had prepared. With a point of his finger, he started a fire. He took out a few metal skewers and stabbed the pheasants over the fire to roast them. He then took out a bunch of seasonings and started serving them slowly. Ziyi pouted her lips and stood far away. Yu Qianqiu sat on top of a rock, concentrating on taking care of the two chickens. He brought out his barbecue skills to the extreme. After waiting for a while, a rich aroma of meat filled the air. Ziyi's nose flared. She couldn't help but occasionally look over. Yu Qianqiu smiled and did not say anything. He waited until the two pheasants were golden yellow in color, and most of the fat was gone. The fragrance lingered and did not dissipate. Then he put out the fire. He raised the two roasted pheasants in his hands and smiled. "Ziyi, come and have a taste. My cooking skills are top-notch. I guarantee that you will never forget it after you eat it." Ziyi wanted to remain silent to express her protest. However, to her dismay, she discovered that the saliva in her mouth increased. After she swallowed it with difficulty, she walked over casually. She did not even look at him. It seemed like she was not interested in the roasted pheasants. "You little gluttonous cat, playing this game with me?" The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth curled up into a smile. He stuck one into the ground beside him, and took a bite of the other roasted pheasant. After chewing a few times he mumbled, "Delicious, delicious." Ziyi turned her head and saw him tear off a layer of yellow and glossy pastry, and put it into his mouth. Then he smacked his lips and revealed an intoxicated expression. Ziyi immediately walked over without saying anything. She grabbed the metal skewer, and pulled out the other pheasant. Then, she sat back to back with Yu Qianqiu and opened her mouth to take a bite. Yu Qianqiu finished eating first. He stood up and threw away the food in his hands. Water flowed between his hands and removed the oil stains. Ziyi placed her hands behind her back, and turned to look at the little gluttonous cat. She ignored her ladylike demeanor, and hugged the pheasant with her hands. After Ziyi finished eating with satisfaction, Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Give me your hands." Ziyi stretched out her 2 hands in astonishment. When she saw the oil stains on her hands, she immediately stuck out her little red tongue. Suddenly, a wriggling little water dragon swam over, and filled her 10 slender fingers, helping her get rid of the oil stains. The feeling of being touched by water was really comfortable. She looked at Yu Qianqiu with delight. However, she heard Yu Qianqiu smile and say, "Pucker up your mouth." Ziyi obediently did as she was told. Once again, she saw a little water dragon come over to help her clean the oil stains on her mouth and face. After the cleanliness, Ziyi widened her eyes and said, "It's delicious. You can roast it for me in the future." Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled. "All right. However, let's make a trip to the Wu clan first." The barrier between them disappeared, and the two of them quickly flew towards the Wu clan. This time, Yu Qianqiu visited the Wu clan secretly. He didn't openly pass through the crowded Hat Island. Instead, he alerted a guard at the periphery of the Wu clan, and instructed him to inform Wu Sihai to make a trip over. When Wu Sihai received the news, he was rather astonished. He didn't know why Jiang Yi was acting so mysteriously. However, Jiang Yi reckoned that Jiang Yi didn't want too many people to know of his arrival. Jiang Yi cooperated and didn't alert anyone else. He only brought the other 3 clan heads over. The few of them met in a deep mountain forest outside of the Wu clan. The 4 clan heads wanted to see that group of rogue cultivators who were famous in the cultivation world, but they only saw 2 of them. They were a little regretful, but they didn't say anything. After exchanging conventional greetings, Yu Qianqiu smiled indifferently and said, "I didn't come here for anything else. I just want to tell everyone that I will be making a trip back to the demon region. Previously, because I killed Wu Zhengang, I promised to bring Senior Wu Bao to meet my master. I hope the Wu clan can make arrangements now and ask Senior Wu Bao if he has the time to go with me." Ziyi was slightly startled. She only found out about Yu Qianqiu's plan now. When she thought about meeting Senior Bai again, she was nervous and excited. The 4 clan heads looked at each other, and were rather excited. After Wu Sihai's excitement, he got a little worried and couldn't help but ask, "Yu Qianqiu, I wonder if Consecrator Wu Bao will be in danger after meeting the old ancestor. I am worried that the old ancestor—" He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone knew what he was worried about. It was obvious that he was afraid of infuriating the old ancestor, and Wu Bao might lose his life. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, "It is useless for you to worry. You can't make the decision for this matter. Why don't you invite the Wu clan's 3 clan elders together, and let them discuss it?" Wu Sihai nodded with a grave expression and said, "Wait for a moment, I will go invite the 3 clan elders immediately." After speaking, he quickly skimmed the sky and left. Chapter 436. When Wu Sihai returned, Wu Bao and the other 2 clan elders were nowhere to be seen. Wu Sihai's answer was that the 3 clan elders might have gone out, so they might not be able to visit the ancestor in the demon domain for the time being. The Bai, Jing, and Tan clan heads looked at each other thoughtfully, but didn't say anything. How could the 3 clan elders just disappear like that? It was more likely that they were afraid of meeting Bai Changchun. This was equivalent to indirectly telling Wu Lixue that they couldn't go. Yu Qianqiu smiled coldly. You're a supervillain. I'm really worried about letting you stay by Wu Lixue's side. I wanted to bring you to the demon domain and kill you, but you didn't want to go. You're smart enough to escape this disaster. Wu Sihai also shook his head awkwardly. No matter how tactful his words were, it was useless. They were not fools, so they naturally understood the twists and turns. He did see Wu Bao just now. When he heard that they were going to visit the ancestor, his expression changed again and again. Wu Bao gritted his teeth and agreed to come, but was stopped by Wu Zhen at the crucial moment. Wu Zhen only said one sentence. Wu Bao, I'm afraid you'll be in danger this time. After all, our surname is not Bai. Listen to me, let's end this matter here. The atmosphere between them was a little strange. Wu Sihai changed the topic. Yu Qianqiu, aren't you going to see Shui Air? The matter between Wu Lixue and Yu Qianqiu was no longer a secret among the upper echelons of the four clans, so he asked without hesitation. Among the people present, only Zi didn't understand what he meant. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly. I have my own way of contacting Shui Air. Saying so, he took out a porcelain bottle and a jade archive from his storage pouch and handed them to Wu Sihai, saying, Senior Wu, please send these two things to Baihua Ferry of Baihua Palace as soon as possible. He then took out a jade archive saying, there are some things recorded in here. There's no risk, please do as I say, Senior Wu. I'll do my best. Wu Sihai received the items and exchanged glances with the other three clan heads. He felt that Yu Qianqiu was acting a little strange today, as if he had purposely come here to put an end to everything. For patriarchs, we shall meet again. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands at the four of them. A flying sword flew out from his sleeve and carried him away. A purple shadow followed behind him. The forest was quiet except for the occasional chirping of birds. The four of them looked at each other. High up in the sky, the two of them pierced through the clouds and mist. After Yu Qianqiu's cultivation increased, his flying speed increased significantly. Zi tilted her head and kept looking at him. The crease between her brows showed that she was thinking about something. Ever since she got together with Yu Qianqiu, she found that she couldn't figure out any of Yu Qianqiu's behaviors. It was beyond her understanding. So she began to learn to think slowly, so that she wouldn't always feel confused. But it was really hard to figure it out. The more he thought about it, the more confused he felt. The thing you gave to the Wu family's patriarch just now, what did you ask him to do for you? Zi sadly realized that she might really be a little stupid. She couldn't figure it out, so she could only ask. Just a small matter. Yu Qianqiu answered perfunctorily. In his impression, this woman was a simple-minded person. Talking to her was just nonsense. She just needed to order her when she needed something. Liar. Zi protested strongly. Her pretty face turned cold again. Yu Qianqiu chuckled, turned his head and said, Don't think about this first. Better think about what my master will ask you after you see him. Ah. Zi suddenly panicked. She asked carefully, What will Senior Bai ask me? If he asks me what I've done, how am I supposed to answer him? Let me think. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. After you came out, you seemed to eat more. You didn't do anything else. No. Zi yelled and interrupted. You can't say that I ate. But I can't lie to my master. Yu Qianqiu frowned. Zi was stunned. She really couldn't lie to Senior Bai, whom she admired the most. Thinking about it carefully, he sadly realized that he seemed to eat more often. It seemed that as long as he was free, he would rarely stop eating. Then what should I do? Senior Bai asked me to help you with something, but I only cared about eating. If Senior Bai finds out about this, how will he look at me? Zi grabbed her hair and looked around blankly. She felt like she was about to collapse. She seemed to regret not being able to control her mouth. Will he kill me in anger? No. Zi said. Suddenly, she yelled again, scaring Yu Qianqiu. She stared at Yu Qianqiu fiercely and said, You have to think of a way for me. Otherwise, don't think about returning to Obedient Island. Even if you want to go, you have to settle Senior Bai's matter first. Otherwise, no one can go back. You actually dare to threaten me? Believe it or not, I can strip you naked and set up a formation on the spot. Yu Qianqiu was startled. In the end he sighed and said, forget it. Whatever my master asks you, just say that you don't know and push the blame onto me. When the time comes, my master will naturally ask me and not you. That's for the best. Ziyi's eyes lit up. Her face brightened up. But then she found Yu Qianqiu looking at her with a strange expression. Ziyi suddenly realized that what she was doing was a little too selfish. She asked nervously, can you bear it alone? Yu Qianqiu immediately asked, how about I let you bear it? No. Ziyi waved her hand and said, you bear it. You are Senior Bai's disciple. He won't do anything to you. If he really wants to punish you, as long as I am fine, I will ask my master to plead for you. Don't worry. Damn it. Like father like daughter. You are just like your father at the crucial moment. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. The demon ghost region was filled with dense fog. All kinds of mournful cries could be heard from time to time. Not long after the two of them entered, some small demons and ghosts peeked at them. When they saw Yu Qianqiu's face, they quickly closed their drooling mouths and buried their heads in fear. The person who came was not someone they could covet. Shuntian Island. In the big house at the center of the island, there was a mat on the floor. It was wiped clean by someone. Bai Changchun was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. He was quiet and peaceful. Beside him, there was another person lying on his side. He was supporting his head with one hand and spinning a teacup with the other. Who else dared to be so unscrupulous around Bai Changchun? It was Mr. Nongzhu, the owner of the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea. The lid of the teacup buzzed and stopped. Two slender and fair fingers flicked on the surface of the teacup. Nongzhu raised her head out of boredom and asked, Bai Changchun, are you really sure that Yu Qianqiu can protect my daughter? Bai Changchun refused to answer this question, which had been asked hundreds of times. Ever since he returned from the South Sea, Nongzhu had been eagerly coming over and staying on Obedient Island ever since. He would ask the same question a few times a day, but he had never been seen seriously cultivating. Even Bai Changchun wondered how this guy had reached the middle stage of deification. Seeing that he did not answer, Nongzhu sat up and took out the flute from his waist. He asked, Bai Changchun, don't you feel bored sitting here all day? Do you want me to play a song for you? Bai Changchun abruptly opened his eyes and stared at the face that was right in front of him. He said in a low voice, if you continue to chatter like a woman, I don't mind crippling you for a few hundred years and sending you back to the soul formation initial stage. Nongzhu quickly retracted his head. Bai Changchun snorted and closed his eyes again. After a while he opened his eyes again and frowned. Why are they here? Their cultivation has improved again. Who? Nongzhu jumped up and said excitedly, who is so stupid to break into your territory? He was bored to death after staying here for so long. Today, he could finally see what was going on. Your baby daughter. Bai Changchun finally replied. What? You mean Ziyi is back? When will she arrive? Nongzhu's handsome face twisted with excitement. He immediately released his divine sense and spread it around the demon ghost region. However, his cultivation was much lower than Bai Changchun's. He tried his best but still could not find Ziyi. But he was sure that it would take some time for his daughter to arrive if he could not find Ziyi with his divine sense. Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi crossed the 1,000 Miles Lake and landed on the island. Miss Mu also found them and was waiting for them on the island. Yu Qianqiu directly asked, Is my master here? Lady Mu nodded slightly and looked enviously at the two of them leaving together. As soon as they entered the big house, they saw two masters sitting cross-legged on one side. At this time, Nongzhu had already concealed her sparse image and completely looked like a master. Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi were stunned at the same time. They did not expect Nongzhu to be here. They quickly saluted. Master, I'm back. Greetings, Senior Nongzhu. Greetings, Senior Bai. Greetings, Master. Bai Changchun nodded slightly and pointed to the front, indicating them to sit down. Nongzhu looked Ziyi up and down carefully. Her daughter should not have suffered any loss. Her face was slightly plump and she looked much better than before. Not bad, not bad. Nongzhu felt relieved. She looked at Yu Qianqiu again, and felt that he was more pleasing to the eye. He should not mistreat his daughter outside. "What's the matter?" Bai Changchun asked. "I miss you, master," Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. Suddenly, he found Nongzhu rolled her eyes disdainfully. He quickly added, "Secondly, I have something to report to master. I have some plans and I want to ask for master's permission first." On the other hand, Ziyi was trembling with fear. She was afraid that Bai Changchun would ask her some questions. Nongzhu looked at Bai Changchun discontentedly. "The atmosphere was so serious that my daughter was scared like this." Chapter 437. You don't need to ask for my opinion, and I won't interfere with you. I don't care what you do, as long as you achieve what I want in the end. Bai Changchun said, looking at his little disciple who was sitting obediently in front of him. Based on his experience of more than 2,000 years, Yu Qianqiu was just a little disciple. Hearing his words, Yu Qianqiu didn't feel anything, but Ziyi was greatly relieved. It was good that Elder Bai didn't ask about it. "I know. But, master, I still have to tell you what I think, or I won't be confident," Yu Qianqiu said. He thought to himself, "The place I want to go has to be backed by this old guy." Before Bai Changchun answered, Nongzhu nodded repeatedly and said, "Say it, tell us all your ideas, and let your master and I see if there is anything wrong." He was eager to know Yu Qianqiu's ideas. He had heard about this guy's bad reputation, and he didn't know what was in his head. Usually he couldn't ask him even if he wanted to. It couldn't be better to hear him say it on his own initiative. After all, his daughter was always by his side, and he couldn't be careless. In front of his master, Nongzhu didn't have the right to make decisions, and Bai Changchun didn't object. Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and said, "Master, to be honest, before I became your disciple, I didn't have a good reputation in the cultivation world of Wuxia, and I had a lot of enemies. This time, it was difficult for me to move forward in the cultivation world of Wuxia. I wanted to do my bit for the cultivation world of Wuxia, but I was always plotted against by various sects, and I couldn't do what you asked me to do. I'm really ashamed." Before he finished speaking, he saw Nongzhu laughing happily. She looked at Yu Qianqiu with her eyes as if saying, "So, you also know that you have a bad reputation?" Bai Changchun slightly raised his eyebrows, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "They plotted against you, and you didn't have any tricks? Humph. If you have suffered a loss and deliberately came to me to complain, then don't say any more. I can't afford to lose my face." The meaning of his words was clearly saying, "If someone hit you, don't you know to hit back?" The smile on Nongzhu's face froze. The master was so strong that even the way he taught his apprentice was so strong. It was obvious that whoever bullied you, you should bully them back. Bai Changchun was indeed worthy of his name. Startled for a moment, he immediately said to his daughter, "Ziyi, Elder Bai's words are priceless advice. You must remember them well." Actually, even without his instruction, Ziyi had already regarded Bai Changchun's every word and action as a rule. She nodded repeatedly and said, "I will remember." Yu Qianqiu respectfully said, "What teacher said makes sense. After disciple joined the Cultivation Alliance, I did the same thing. That's why I had a conflict with the Delu sect, which is ranked second among the righteous sections. In the end, the disciple lost more than 200 subordinates while the Deluo sect lost more than 1,000 people. No one gained any advantage in the conflict. Instead, the Wuxia Cultivation Alliance was weakened and the foreign cultivators gained the upper hand. I want to... Wait. Nongzhu stopped him. She looked at Ziyi up and down again and said, "So many people died, and the matter became so big? There are many cultivators in the Deluo sect at the final stage of the nature's test. Ziyi, are you okay? Damn it. It's not too late for you to say it after I'm done." Yu Qianqiu glanced at Nongzhu unhappily. It was not a good feeling to be interrupted in the middle of a conversation. "I'm fine," Ziyi replied. "Master, you don't know. The Deluo sect is so hateful. As soon as Yu Qianqiu and I arrived in the Wuxia cultivation world, the head of the Deluo sect came looking for trouble and fought with Yu Qianqiu. Humph. But he didn't know who taught Yu Qianqiu. In the end, he lost an arm and came back with hatred. He deserved it. Haha. This guy killed his son. Of course he wants revenge. Nongzhu paused and said suspiciously. The head of the Deluo sect is called Luo Qingtian. He seems to be at the middle stage of the nature's test. Are you sure this guy defeated Luo Qingtian? As far as she knew, although Yu Qianqiu's cultivation improved very quickly, he was still at the nascent soul stage. Bai Changchun didn't care. Healy was also at the middle stage of the nature's test, but he was still killed by Yu Qianqiu. But he didn't know that Healy had a high status in the demon ghost region. Usually no one dared to provoke him. He didn't have much combat experience, and was not at the same level as Luo Qingtian. Nongzhu often wandered around in the outside world. Naturally, she knew this better than Bai Changchun. Master, yes, it's that guy called Luo Qingtian. After he was defeated, he said that the grudge between the Deluo sect and Yu Qianqiu was written off. But after that he still allowed his disciples to provoke us. Not long ago, in Wanghai town, 4 Deluo sect cultivators at the late stage of the nature's test led more than 1,000 disciples to fight with us. In the end, more than 1,000 disciples were almost killed by Yu Qianqiu's subordinates, Ziyi said with a smile. This was the nature of women. After finding someone to talk to, it was hard to stop talking. Nongzhu looked at Bai Changchun, who was calm. She turned around and asked, Yu Qianqiu, where did you get so many subordinates? Did you bring people from the demon ghost region? Yu Qianqiu just wanted to make up an excuse, but Ziyi said first. We didn't bring them out of the demon ghost region. We spent money to hire thugs. We have been making money outside, and then we spent money to hire thugs to help us. Why did she mention the matter of making money? Yu Qianqiu sweated profusely. He was almost stunned. Before coming here, he deliberately mentioned Bai Changchun to scare this one-track mind. He was afraid that she would talk nonsense. Who knew that once she started talking, even if he put a knife on her neck, she couldn't stop talking. It seemed that he had underestimated this woman's mouth. Spent money to hire thugs? Such a hooligan way of doing things? Well, that sounds like your style. Nongzhu laughed. If Ziyi didn't need to do anything, she wouldn't be in danger. He agreed with this approach. But then he thought it was not right, so he asked suspiciously again. Ziyi, you just said that there were 4 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity. Did you spend money to hire them to be your thugs? Although the cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity were nothing in his eyes, he knew that they were already the top masters in the so-called cultivation world. They couldn't be hired with money. No, the strongest of the thugs we hired was only at the early stage of the passing calamity. As for the 4 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity, Yu Qianqiu and I fought 2 each. Speaking of this, Ziyi looked at Nongzhu embarrassedly and said, I'm ashamed. I fought 2 at the same time, but I couldn't win. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu beat the 2 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity, so hard that they couldn't fight back. If it weren't for the masters coming to stop him, I'm afraid that Yu Qianqiu would have killed them. Hearing this, not to mention Nongzhu, even Bai Changchun looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise. Nongzhu was stunned and said, Girl, are you talking in your sleep? She turned to look at Yu Qianqiu and said, Tell me what happened. They went too far, and I couldn't help but get angry, so I went all out. Yu Qianqiu replied weakly. But I didn't expect that the cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity would be so weak. I was lucky to win. Speaking of such a glorious deed, he was indeed proud of himself. But in front of these 2 masters, it was better to be humble. Bai Changchun frowned slightly and slowly closed his eyes. Nongzhu couldn't stop laughing and said, Lucky, you used lucky really well. When your master was only at the early stage of the transforming spirit realm, he dared to challenge the masters at the last stage of the transforming spirit realm. Tut-tut. Like master, like disciple. I've seen it today. There's no justice in this world. Elder Bai's disciple is naturally not an ordinary person. Ziyi peeped at Bai Changchun and flattered him. Bai Changchun frowned slightly again. No one knew what he was feeling at this time. Nongzhu was stunned. She had raised this daughter for so many years, but she had never flattered her. She didn't expect that she would flatter someone else in front of her for the first time. This was unbearable. Nongzhu's jealousy was suddenly overturned. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and said with jealousy in her mouth, "Your master has a lot of contact with the old monster in the southern Ming Empire. Your master must have given you some spirit treasure. Show me what you used to defeat the two guys at the last stage of the Crossing Heavens test." That. Yu Qianqiu lamented in his heart. Zi was so talkative that she finally talked about something she shouldn't talk about. The black fire flying sword was made of the ghost fire of the netherworld. It could fool ordinary people, but it was very difficult to fool the two guys in front of him. Especially by Changchun, he had seen the message left by the old guy in the 9th netherworld cave. What this and that? Are you afraid that I will rob your treasure? Show me. Nongzhu said very unhappily. She thought to herself, my daughter has flattered your master for the first time. I just want to see your treasure. Why are you complaining? When Yu Qianqiu was still hesitating, Nongzhu directly took action. Before Yu Qianqiu could react, he felt something around his waist. He looked down and found that the storage bag was gone. On the other hand, there was a storage bag in Nongzhu's hand. She was shaking it in confusion. It's over. It's exposed. Yu Qianqiu suddenly became silent. Brat, are you kidding me? Nongzhu held the storage bag and asked, is it fun to hang an empty bag on your waist? I knew that you are not a good guy, but I didn't expect you to be so cautious. You actually hung an empty bag to fool people. Master, is there nothing in it? Ziyi asked curiously. She saw Yu Qianqiu put things in it every time. Just as she finished asking, her master threw the storage bag to her hand and let her see for herself. Ziyi used her divine sense to check it. It was empty. There was nothing in it. It was very clean. This should be the storage pouch. I know it. Ziyi tilted her head and asked, Yu Qianqiu, where are the things inside? Where did you hide them? Chapter 438. I'll hide it in your grandma's house. Why are you joining in the fun? Yu Qianqiu was really speechless. His storage bag was just for show. Everything was taken and placed in Utopia through this bag. Who would go through his storage bag normally? It was only because of Nongzhu, who was so unreasonable, that she took it without being asked. He had to take revenge. Yu Qianqiu made up his mind and said with a look of sudden realization, Senior Nongzhu, I almost forgot something. Someone asked me to ask you a question. Nongzhu chuckled. Trying to change the topic? Among the people you know, who else knows me? Old thing. Don't regret it. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed, but he put on a serious face and said, Someone told me to ask you if you know someone called Xiaoyao. Nongzhu's teasing smile froze on her face. She probably wouldn't be able to recover in a while. Bai Changchun opened his eyes and glanced at the father and daughter with a strange expression. Then he closed his eyes again as if he didn't hear anything. After a long time, Nongzhu looked at Ziyi, who was staring at her with a guilty conscience. She coughed and said, Yu Qianqiu, who told you to ask me? It's Fairy Qianghua, the leader of the Moon Clan, which is ranked 3rd in the Wuxia cultivation world. She asked me to ask you. Do you know her? Yu Qianqiu said seriously. However, the smugness in his eyes was caught by Nongzhu. Nongzhu's face darkened. She asked Ziyi, Have you seen the leader too? Yes, that woman is very annoying. But she's quite generous and gave us a lot of spirit stones. Ziyi smiled. Since she gave you spirit stones, how can you talk bad about her behind her back? Nongzhu reprimanded. However, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was clear that Yu Qianqiu knew something, but Ziyi was still in the dark. Ziyi stuck out her red tongue and quickly shut up. Master rarely reprimanded her like this. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianqiu coldly and said in a low voice, I don't know any Xiaoyao. Don't ask me such questions in the future. I hate it when people ask me boring questions. If there's a next time, I'll break your legs. At that time, even your master won't be able to protect you. The warning in his words was very strong. Yu Qianqiu nodded in agreement. After what he had done, the other party would probably back off and not make things difficult for him anymore. However, Yu Qianqiu's plan was wrong. Nongzhu was apparently not afraid of his threat. She said indifferently, Cut the crap. Take out your treasure. If you continue to hide it, I will strip you naked and search for it. It seemed that she wanted to catch Yu Qianqiu and take revenge on him. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched. He thought to himself, "Fine, you are so cruel. When I bring Qianghua Fairy to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, I will definitely let you reunite with your wife and have fun. To be honest, Senior Nongzhu, I really don't have any treasure. The so-called treasure is just a way to condense fire under the guidance of my master. It can fool others, but it's not elegant in front of you," Yu Qianqiu said with a bitter smile. "Condense fire? What kind of magic art is that? I've never seen your master use it. Come on, show it to me and see if you can fool me." Nongzhu suddenly became interested. Ziyi had been with Yu Qianqiu for a long time, but it was the first time she heard this. Her face turned cold. She gave Yu Qianqiu 2 words in her heart: liar. "How dare I show off in front of you? You don't have to, right? Cut the crap. Hurry up." Yu Qianqiu scratched his head. Under the gaze of the father and daughter, he stretched out his palm. In the room, a green shadow was shining. A green fire was ignited in Yu Qianqiu's palm, and it started to spin rapidly. As the fire gradually grew smaller, the misty green light in the room disappeared, and a green flying sword floated above his palm. Bai Changchun didn't care about it at all. He knew when Yu Qianqiu practiced this magic art. Ziyi was stunned. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu's flying sword was condensed by fire. No wonder his sleeve was like a storage bag, and he could summon a flying sword just by waving his hand. Interesting. Nongzhu raised her hand and took the green flying sword into her hand. She flicked the sword with her slender fingers, and the sound of metal clanking could be heard. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Thousands of magic arts, endless and endless. It's really magical, really magical." Ziyi tilted her head and looked at it for a while. Suddenly, she frowned and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you didn't use a green flying sword to defeat the 2 cultivators at the end of the nature test stage. What I saw was clearly a black flying sword. Could it be condensed from black flames?" She didn't know what the green fire and black fire meant. She just thought that the green fire could condense into a green flying sword, and the black flying sword must be condensed by black fire. Black fire? Nongzhu was shocked and stared at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. Even Bai Changchun opened his eyes instantly. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, piercing Yu Qianqiu's body. "Damn it. Ziyi, you bitch, you win." Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered, and he felt extremely guilty. He didn't know what would happen if he hid this from Bai Changchun, so he quickly thought about how to deal with it. "You can hide the black fire in your body?" Bai Changchun asked word by word. Nongzhu looked at him in surprise and asked, "Old Bai, don't you know?" According to his deduction, if Yu Qianqiu could subdue the black fire as his disciple, then Bai Changchun as his master could naturally do it too. If so, didn't Bai Changchun have the ability to cross the sea of netherworld fire and open the gate to the underworld with his flesh and blood? But it seemed that even he didn't know about his disciple. Ziyi looked at the 2 masters' faces. She didn't expect that her words could make them react so strongly. After thinking for a while, she was also surprised. She remembered that her master had told her about the 3 true fire. If Yu Qianqiu really had the black fire, wouldn't it be the legendary black fire that ranked second in the 3 true fire? Thinking about it, she was also shocked. It was the legendary netherworld ghost fire that guarded the gate to the underworld. It was the barrier that separated the human world and the underworld. How could Yu Qianqiu have the black fire? "Yes, master." Yu Qianqiu stammered, but he had a countermeasure in his heart. He was relieved. Nongzhu knocked on the cyan flying sword in her hand and said in surprise, "You mean you can carry the netherworld ghost fire like the cyan fire?" "I think so." Yu Qianqiu continued to be vague. "Yu Qianqiu, don't scare me." "What do you mean by I think so? Don't make fun of me and your master." "Yes means yes, no means no." Nongzhu asked with her eyes wide open. Bai Changchun also stared at his disciple with a burning gaze and said, "Release your black flame and let me see." "Since master has said so, this disciple will do as you say." Yu Qianqiu stood up and bowed to the 2. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu stood up at the same time and slowly stepped back. They looked serious as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Seeing her daughter still sitting beside Yu Qianqiu, Nongzhu immediately shouted, "Ziyi, come to my back. You can't bear the power of the black fire." Ziyi frowned and thought, Is it so terrible? I have seen it before, and the black fire flying sword is not so powerful. Although she thought about it, she still stood up and hurried to her master's back. Bai Changchun nodded and said, "Let's start." Yu Qianqiu bowed again, and started to use the fire incantation quietly. The three suddenly found that Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly became as dark as ink, and a strange black fire appeared in each of his eyes. Then they heard a light buzz. In the blink of an eye, Yu Qianqiu had been wrapped by a black fire. Although it was strange, it didn't make people feel that it was very powerful. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu looked at each other with some doubts in their eyes. Ziyi looked at the two elders, and then walked to Yu Qianqiu. She looked at the black fire curiously and asked, "Yu Qianqiu, is this the legendary Netherworld ghost fire? I don't think it's that good." Nongzhu turned her head and said, "Old Bai, didn't you say that you had stayed in front of the Netherworld fire? Let's see if it's true or not." "It looks like it, but it doesn't have the power of the Netherworld ghost fire." Bai Changchun frowned. "That's strange." Nongzhu shouted to Yu Qianqiu, "Boy, you didn't make a fake thing to scare people, did you? This is my trump card at the critical moment, and it's the first time I show it to people. How dare you doubt the power of my trump card?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said to Bai Changchun respectfully, "Master, I have restrained the power of the black fire. If you want to see it, I can release it at any time." "Good. Release it and see," Bai Changchun said without hesitation. Nongzhu shouted again, "Ziyi, come back." Ziyi didn't care about the two old guys' shock and thought, "There's nothing to be afraid of." She couldn't disobey her master, so she walked back slowly. Yu Qianqiu glanced at her and thought, "You talk too much. I'll teach you a lesson today." A ghastly and cold aura burst out from Yu Qianqiu's body in an instant. All kinds of extreme negative aura, such as despair, desolation, loneliness, brutality, and death, had filled the whole room in an instant, making people feel like they were falling into the sea of bitterness and unable to escape. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu's pupils suddenly shrank. Bai Changchun even shouted, "Yes, it's the Netherworld ghost fire." At this time, Yu Qianqiu, wrapped in the black fire and all kinds of extreme aura, came to the human world like a messenger of the underworld. He wanted to trample on happiness and spread the glory of the god of death. Under Yu Qianqiu's deliberate obstruction, Ziyi in the hall shuddered again and again. She was originally walking toward her master, but she suddenly stopped. She was on the verge of collapsing, and her mind became absent-minded. His body and mind were immersed in endless sorrow. He thought about his parents whom he had never seen before. Why did his parents abandon him when he was born? If even his parents abandoned him, then what was the point of him living? It was better to die. Chapter 439. An endless stream of negative emotions silently descended upon Ziyi. Furthermore, she was completely defenseless. Even though Ziyi's cultivation was at the end of the tribulation passing stage, her mental state was on the verge of collapse. She even had the thought of suicide. For people like Bai Changchun and Nongzhu, their divine sense was as strong as steel and their psyche power was very strong. The negative emotions were not enough to affect them. However, the chill that went deep into their bones forced them to use their cultivation to resist it. Bai Changchun was fine. Firstly, his cultivation was very strong. Secondly, he had been to the sea of Netherworld fire, so he was not surprised. Nongzhu was shocked. It was not that she could not resist it, but for the first time, she found that the Netherworld ghost fire was not hot. It was the other extreme of the fire that she knew. It was extremely cold, which could not be measured by the common sense of the human world. The two masters were looking at Yu Qianqiu. Suddenly, they found that Ziyi was lying on the ground. Nongzhu exclaimed, "Ziyi, what happened to you?" She threw away the green flying sword in her hand. He teleported to Ziyi quickly and helped her up. While he was distracted, all kinds of extreme negative emotions quickly invaded his mind. Nongzhu was shocked and quickly dispelled the evil thoughts. "Put away the black fire." Bai Changchun shouted. Yu Qianqiu did not dare to hesitate. He quickly put away the black fire and the green flying sword that Nongzhu threw away. The gloomy atmosphere in the room quickly disappeared, and the low temperature dissipated. Nongzhu held Ziyi up and pointed two fingers. A dazzling silver light appeared on her fingertips, which illuminated the whole room. Then she pointed between Ziyi's eyebrows. The silver light was slowly injected into Ziyi's body. Ziyi's whole body was suddenly covered with a misty white light. Yu Qianqiu did not understand what it was, but Bai Changchun shook his head slightly. Nongzhu really loved her daughter. She injected 10 years of cultivation into her daughter's body without any hesitation. 10 years of cultivation of a cultivator in the middle stage of the divine transformation realm was equivalent to 100 years of cultivation of Ziyi. Ziyi slowly woke up and saw her master hugging her. She shivered and her teeth trembled as she said, "Master, disciple is so cold. Am I going to die?" "Nonsense. I will drive the cold away for you." Nongzhu's eyes turned red in an instant. With a muffled hum, her body suddenly emitted a dense white flame, wrapping Ziyi in her arms. Ziyi's tense body gradually relaxed, and her face began to regain color. She was so comfortable that she fell asleep. Bai Changchun frowned and shouted, "Nongzhu, that's enough. Ziyi is fine. You don't need to burn your cultivation to drive her away." Yu Qianqiu was wondering if this was the legendary human fire that could be released by someone with high cultivation. After hearing Bai Changchun's words, he was shocked. Nongzhu was actually burning her cultivation. Oh my! She was going to punish him later. Nongzhu turned a deaf ear to him, and was still burning her cultivation to give her beloved daughter careful care. Bai Changchun flicked Nongzhu's back with a white light. The human fire on Nongzhu's body at the cost of her cultivation was immediately extinguished. Bai Changchun waved his palm and slapped in the air. A strong momentum rushed out, and directly shook Nongzhu to one side. "Oh Bai, what are you doing?" Nongzhu immediately got up and shouted. Bai Changchun ignored him. He raised his hand and formed 5 claws. Ziyi, who was lying on the ground, slowly floated up and moved towards Bai Changchun. Her head touched the 5 claws, and 5 wisps of golden qi entered Ziyi's head from the claws. Immediately Ziyi let out a moan and opened her eyes. Nongzhu's face lit up and she ran over happily. Bai Changchun waved his palm faintly, and the purple robe spun as he gently stood on the ground. He looked around in confusion and asked, "What happened to me just now?" "Is she all right?" Nongzhu asked worriedly. Bai Changchun snorted coldly and said, "It's just an external evil invading the body. Just dispel it. Is there a need to make such a fuss?" "Ah, that's good, that's good." Nongzhu laughed and returned to normal in a blink of an eye, as if nothing had happened. However, the way he looked at Yu Qianqiu seemed to be harboring evil intentions. Bai Changchun waved his hand and pushed Nongzhu away. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Have you been to the 9th Netherworld cave?" "I went there out of curiosity," Yu Qianqiu answered honestly. He almost made a big mistake just now. He did not expect the black fire to be so powerful. Ziyi, who was in the last phase of the heavens test, was so weak in front of the black fire. "With your cultivation, can you break into the 9th Netherworld cave?" Bai Changchun frowned. "Is it the 9th Netherworld cave?" "Senior Bai, I can prove that he did go in there. I went with him." Ziyi recovered and walked over to testify. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. "How come I don't remember going in there with you?" Bai Changchun and Nongzhu looked at each other. Nongzhu said seriously, "Ziyi, don't talk nonsense. With your cultivation, how can you enter the 9th Netherworld cave?" Ziyi hurriedly explained. "No, when I left the demon region with Yu Qianqiu last time we went there. I was outside and did not go in, but I saw him go in with my own eyes. He stayed there for a long time." Yu Qianqiu was happy. He was afraid that Bai Changchun would think that he deliberately did not report it. Now that Ziyi said it, it could be explained. It was not that he did not want to tell her, but he did not come back until now. That was why he did not tell her. He guessed right. Although Bai Changchun did not care whether he could have the black fire or not, he suspected that he deliberately did not say it. Now that Ziyi said it, he felt a little relieved. "With your cultivation, can you enter the Sea of Netherworld fire?" Bai Changchun asked. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. "To tell you the truth, I was curious and wanted to see what the legendary 9th Netherworld cave looked like. Who knew that it was so dangerous inside? After I went in, it was difficult to come out." But I accidentally found that the green fire on me could restrain the chilly wind and evil spirit in the cave, so I went in. Nongju clicked her tongue and exclaimed, "You're really bold. You actually entered the 9th nether cave just because of a moment of curiosity?" There was something in his heart that he didn't say out. "Even I dare not go deep into the end. Even if you can go there, with your cultivation, it is impossible to go through the eye of the wind. How did you go there?" Bai Changchun asked coldly. He had high expectations for Yu Qianqiu, but he would not allow him to use his expectations to deceive him. If so, how could he entrust the position of the Demon Region torture envoy to him in the future? It was better to kill him on the spot, lest he entrusted it to the wrong person. Nongju was someone who knew Bai Changchun well. She immediately felt the killing intent in his words, and could not help but be secretly shocked. She did not say a word. Yu Qianqiu acutely noticed this, and his back broke out in cold sweat. His divine sense quickly locked onto Utopia. If he found anything wrong, he would escape immediately. However, he still scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. "I'm afraid people will laugh at my method. I really can't go there, so I used a stupid method. I dug a tunnel under the eye of the wind, and went in just like that." "What? You dug a tunnel in the 9th netherworld cave?" Nongju did not want to speak anymore, but she could not help but say something when she heard such a ridiculous thing. In fact, he had entered the 9th netherworld cave before, but he could not go through the eye of the wind. Bai Changchun was stunned as well, and said, "It's all solid netherworld metal inside. How can you dig a tunnel?" "Hehe. Master might not know, but my green fire flying sword is quite sharp. It is not difficult to dig a tunnel in the netherworld metal. However, I did not expect to see masters." Yu Qianqiu chuckled and did not continue. Nongju asked curiously, "What did you see about your master?" Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said with a tight-lipped look, "Nothing much, just a few words." When he said that, Nongju was even more curious. She turned her head and said, "Old Bai, what words did you leave inside?" Bai Changchun could not be bothered with him and continued to ask, "Since you have seen the words I left behind, with the profoundness of your fire technique, I believe the netherworld fire sea cannot stop you. Did you see what is behind the netherworld fire sea?" Nongju's eyes lit up and stared at Yu Qianqiu. Until now, she had never heard of anyone being able to pass through the netherworld fire sea. She had never heard of the situation behind. Could this brat really be the first? "I am quite curious. When I got there, I could not help but go and have a look. I did go there, but I did not find anything interesting behind." Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and said, "There is a huge netherworld metal mountain wall, on which there are many skulls of different sizes carved. There is also a huge door. Other than that, I did not see anything good." The netherworld gate. Bai Changchun and Nongju were shocked at the same time. The former slowly closed his eyes and sighed softly. He didn't expect that his disciple would stupidly barge into the place that he failed to enter. Ziyi looked at Yu Qianqiu eagerly and felt annoyed. He had been to such an interesting place, but he had never told me about it. What a liar! Nongju rubbed her hands excitedly and said, Yu Qianqiu, although I do not dare to say that you are the first person in history, you are definitely the only person in the cultivation world who has played in front of the netherworld gate. I, Nongju, admire you. Senior Nongju, what is so interesting about that place? It is full of ghosts. Yu Qianqiu looked disdainful and deliberately acted cool. Nongju opened her mouth and was speechless. She realized that she had no common language with this lunatic. She waved her hand and said, Don't interrupt me. Tell me, what does the netherworld gate look like? Nothing much. The gate is very tall and big, and there are many expressions of happiness, anger, sadness, and happiness carved on it. Yu Qianqiu said as he slapped his forehead and said, That's right, there are also 2 Ouroboros which are quite mighty. I thought that the knocker was some kind of treasure, so I specially cut off the teeth of the Ouroboros and made a knocker to play with. Who knew that it was useless? Chapter 440. The corner of Bai Changchun's mouth twitched. Nongju's expression was even more interesting. It was no exaggeration to say that her expression was ever changing. She gritted her teeth and asked, Did you saw off the knocker of the gate to the underworld? I didn't get all of them, just one. Because the 2 animal teeth were too solid, it was troublesome. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head. Ziyi could imagine what the gate to the underworld was, for no matter how inexperienced she was. This guy actually dared to. Ziyi looked at him dumbfounded. For the first time, the word audacious appeared in her mind. Clap clap. Nongzhu's gaze lingered on the master and disciple. She shook her head and exclaimed, like master, like disciple. I admire you so much. You two are a perfect match. Then, as if she thought of something, she said to Yu Qianqiu, where's the thing? Is the knocker with you? Take it out and let me have a look. Yu Qianqiu touched his waist subconsciously. It was empty. Only then did he remember that his storage bag was snatched by Nongzhu. He glanced at the storage bag on the ground and couldn't help but curse Nongzhu's ancestors. He knew that Bai Changchun was already suspicious. Although it was better now, if he didn't take out some evidence to completely dispel his doubts, the consequences would be unpredictable. So under the gazes of the others, Yu Qianqiu reached into his clothes and searched for a while. He weakly took out another storage bag and smiled awkwardly at them. Bai Changchun, Nongzhu and Ziyi were stunned at the same time. They looked at the storage bag on the ground with different expressions. They couldn't tell what it smelled like. Old Bai, you have a good disciple, Nongzhu said to Bai Changchun as if she was praising him. Bai Changchun's eyebrows twitched. He was really speechless. I have offended too many people in the cultivation world, so I had to hang this storage bag to confuse the enemies outside. Yu Qianqiu explained. Actually, even this storage bag was taken from Utopia at the last minute. As he spoke, he reached into the storage bag and took out a pair of black tusks as long as chopsticks and as thick as a banana. He handed them to Nongzhu. When this pair of things was taken out, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped a lot. A faintly discernible gloomy aura gradually filled the room. The pupils of the other 3 slightly shrank. Yu Qianqiu also felt it himself. He was somewhat surprised. He didn't feel anything unusual in front of the gate of the underworld. How could it be like this now? He himself had forgotten one thing. The eerie aura in front of the underworld gate was already very dense. The aura emitted by the 2 fangs was really insignificant. How could he have sensed it at that time? Now that they were in the mortal world, it would be strange if something from the netherworld appeared here. Nongzhu held the 2 black sticks in her hands and felt that they were cold to the bone. They were indeed extraordinary. She knocked them against each other, and the sound of dang dang was dull but heart-wrenching. Every time it rang, people would feel frightened. Is this the tooth of the heaven-devouring beast on the gate to the netherworld? Nongzhu asked. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu nodded in agreement, he turned it over and over again for a long time, but he could not tell what it was made of. Shaking his head, he passed it to Bai Changchun and said, Old Bai, take a look at what this is. I have never seen it before. Bai Changchun took it and looked at it for a long time, but he was also silent. Obviously, he couldn't tell it apart. Where is the ring? Nongzhu frowned and said, I want to see the ring. Why did you give me 2 animal teeth? F***ck. Wouldn't it be more believable if he had teeth and rings? Yu Qianqiu reached into the storage bag again, but his vision blurred and the storage bag in his hand disappeared. Looking up, Nongzhu seemed to be crazily playing with the storage bag. Yu Qianqiu had a bad feeling about this. Sure enough, Nongzhu suddenly raised his head with his eyes wide open. Weighing the storage bag in his hand, he shouted without caring about his handsome image. Yu Qianqiu, don't tell me that this is another thing you used to confuse the enemy. Pa. The storage bag was thrown aside. Bai Changchun and Ziyi were stunned at the same time. They rarely saw Nongzhu lose his composure like this. Don't, I am more than 1,000 years old, I can't bear it. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He reached into his robe and took out another storage pouch. He smiled awkwardly and said, I have too many storage pouches for self-defense. I took the wrong one. He quickly took out a large black ring from the storage pouch. The temperature in the hall dropped again, and the gloomy atmosphere became stronger. It seemed that the inside and outside of the hall were 2 different worlds. Yu Qianqiu respectfully handed the ring to Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun took it and returned the 2 animal teeth to him. Holding the big ring, He squinted his eyes and looked at it carefully. When Yu Qianqiu was about to put the 2 animal teeth away, the storage bag in his hand disappeared again. He saw Nongzhu holding the storage bag and sneered, "Is it empty again?" Then he injected his divine sense into it to check. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He stared at Nongzhu's handsome face, which was gradually changing shape. Pa! The storage bag was thrown away again. Nongzhu slowly walked towards him with a twitching face and said, "I'll strip you naked and see how many storage bags you have." Ziyi looked at her master in surprise. She didn't expect her master to be so shameless. Not only did he rob Nongzhu several times, but he also wanted to strip Nongzhu naked. "Master, help me." Yu Qianqiu felt wronged and moved to Bai Changchun's side. Bai Changchun stared at Nongzhu coldly and scolded, "Have you had enough? Don't you act like a master?" Then he threw the big ring to Nongzhu. Nongzhu caught the big ring and was slightly stunned. Looking at Ziyi, he realized that it was inappropriate. Stripping a man naked in front of his daughter was not something a father should do. Shame. She was so angry that she became muddle-headed. How could she say such things in front of her daughter? In order to cover up her embarrassment, Nongzhu held the big ring and examined it seriously. After looking at it, she nodded and said, "This thing is obviously made of the same material as the 2 beast teeth. We can't tell, so it must be something rare. Maybe Nanming can recognize it. Why don't we show it to him?" After a pause, Nongzhu suddenly laughed out loud and said, "Old Bai, with this thing in hand, even if you can't harvest any of the flame-deficient profound fruits outside, and even if it's difficult to invite that old guy from Nanming, I guarantee that he will still come to you. That old guy can't resist the temptation of this rare material." Haha. Bai Changchun nodded slightly. He had already imagined what Nongzhu said. Nanming would come to him and beg him. He couldn't help but smile. But then he frowned and subconsciously looked at Yu Qianqiu. This thing was his disciple's. As a master, how could he use his disciple's things without permission? Not to mention, he had never given anything to Yu Qianqiu. Nongzhu knew Bai Changchun very well. Looking at his expression, she knew what he was worried about. This world's #1 master had his own pride. He would rather break than bend. He would never ask his disciple for something. It seemed that it was time for him to be the bad guy again. Nongzhu coughed and said to Yu Qianqiu indifferently, "Yu Qianqiu, what do you need these 2 beast teeth and the door knocker for? If not, you can give them to your master. Your master has great use for them." Since the words were so clear, how could Yu Qianqiu not know what she meant? He immediately offered the 2 beast teeth and said, "Master, if you need them, you can take them. Anyway, they are useless in my hands. If they are not enough, you can tell me. At worst, I will tear down the gate of the underworld." Tear down the gate of the underworld? Nongzhu was shocked and said, "Yu Qianqiu, don't mess around. That gate is very important. It is the thing that separates the yin and yang. You can't touch it. The 2 beast teeth and the door knocker are enough." He had heard a lot about Yu Qianqiu, and he knew that there was nothing this guy didn't dare to do in the cultivation world. But how could the cultivation world be compared with the underworld? The underworld was as famous as the immortal world. If he really tore down the gate of the underworld, oh my, God knows what would happen. Ziyi was shocked by Yu Qianqiu's words again. She stuck out her bright red tongue. She really admired Yu Qianqiu from the bottom of her heart. He wanted to tear down the gate of the underworld. "Master, is it really enough? If not, I can leave the ghost gate alone for the time being. But I can get you another door knocker." Yu Qianqiu patted his chest and promised. "Do you really think it belongs to you?" Nongzhu was speechless. Bai Changchun stared at Yu Qianqiu with his deep eyes, as if he could see through people's thoughts, which made Yu Qianqiu feel guilty. After a while, Bai Changchun silently put the 2 ferocious broken teeth and the big ring into the storage bag, and said to Yu Qianqiu, "Follow me to the 9th Netherworld cave." Why would I go to the 9th Netherworld cave? I just said it casually. Does the old guy really want me to tear down the gate of the underworld? No way. Yu Qianqiu was shocked, but he forced himself to calm down and saluted. Before he could finish the word yes, he felt his arm was tightened. His vision blurred, and the wind suddenly rushed in his ears. When he opened his eyes again, he was already above the sparkling 1,000-mile lake, flying at a speed that he had never experienced before. His arm was grabbed by Bai Changchun. Suddenly, someone shouted from behind, "Old Bai, wait for me. Don't fly so fast." Yu Qianqiu looked back and saw that the Shuntian island had become a sesame pit. Nongzhu had already followed them from afar and was gradually approaching. Ziyi, who was on the Shuntian island, saw that the three people in front of her had suddenly disappeared. She was stunned for a moment, but then she thought of the conversation between them and immediately understood what was going on. She immediately shouted, "Master, take me to see them." But when she teleported to the sky outside the house, she could no longer see the shadows of the three people. She circled around in the sky for a few times and then came back in a huff. When Nongzhu caught up with them, the three people had just passed through the beautiful 1,000-mile lake, turned into shadows and flew into the endless clouds and fog. Yu Qianqiu looked around him, and he was so shocked that he was speechless. The #1 expert in the world was indeed extraordinary. How long had it been? In less than an hour, they had already left the 1,000-mile lake. Chapter 441. Nongzhu was also shocked. Although she knew that Bai Changchun's cultivation was strong, it was hard for her to catch up with him while flying. The gap between them was hard to measure, and it seemed that he didn't try his best. What he showed was just average. "Old Bai, why are you in a hurry to go to the 9th abyss cave?" Nongzhu asked. Bai Changchun looked ahead and didn't answer her. He sighed in his heart. If he didn't want Yu Qianqiu to take over the demon realm, he wouldn't have to do this. The demon realm had been passed down from generation to generation. The torture envoy of each generation couldn't be easily appointed. They had to be carefully selected without any negligence. Once the wrong person was appointed, the whole world would be in chaos, and the painstaking efforts of the previous torture envoys would be wasted. If Yu Qianqiu was just his disciple, it wouldn't be a big deal. But this guy had great potential and Bai Changchun liked him at first sight. However, he could also tell that this fellow was not someone who would settle down. His actions were sneaky, and he flattered without hesitation. He was not stingy with his flattery, and he did not know what shame was. But these were not the most important things for Bai Changchun. A disciple who didn't have the ability to adapt would be embarrassed. That was why he asked Yu Qianqiu to help the Wuxia cultivation world. The purpose was to train him. In fact, people like Bai Changchun, who had reached the level of cultivation, cared about all the people in the world. Why would they care about the cultivation world of China? In his eyes, the cultivation world had long lost the distinction of nationality. The cultivation world was the cultivation world. Cultivators from different countries were all part of the cultivation world. The soul formation realm cultivators from different countries were just like chickens and dogs in Bai Changchun's eyes. He could kill them in an instant. No one in the world could stop him. But he understood the way of heaven and understood balance was the truth. Since he understood this way, he had to keep it. Bai Changchun didn't have much time. Since he chose Yu Qianqiu to take over as the torture envoy of the demon realm, he had to make the best use of time to train this guy. The soul formation experts of each country could be used as a whetstone to sharpen the blunt knife that was Yu Qianqiu. Once the blunt knife revealed its cold edge and became invincible when it wielded the knife to sweep the world, it would be time to hide its edge in the demon ghost region. In this way, the demon realm would still be a forbidden area in the world. No one dared to violate it, because one of them could intimidate the world. As long as the torture envoy was there, the demon realm would not be chaotic. The cultivation world would not be in chaos if the demon ghost territory was not in chaos, and the world would not be in chaos if the cultivation world was not in chaos. This was the responsibility of the torture envoy of the demon ghost territory. However, no matter how high Bai Changchun's cultivation was, the human heart was fickle, and he couldn't see through it. If his disciple even lied his master, how could he entrust him with such an important task? The Jitian Jiji Changchun's heart. For example, Bai Changchun himself. Few people in the cultivation world who knew him would say that he was a good person. His high cultivation, unreasonable, and indiscriminate killing of innocent people were his trademark. Therefore, He would not use the standards of a good person to judge Yu Qianqiu. However, he valued the quality of his character. Therefore, no matter how perfect Yu Qianqiu's story was, Bai Changchun still had to go to the ninth nether cave to see for himself. If it was not true, Nongzhu would have to prepare to take over the demon realm. The lingering sound of the three people flying in the sky made the people in the demon realm tremble and hide quietly. Coming from the direction of the 1,000-mile lake, who else could have such a cultivation except for the emotionless torturing envoy? The place where the three people flew over was so quiet that no sound could be heard. Yu Qianqiu already knew what Bai Changchun was going to do. Fortunately, he was very honest and told everything. There was nothing to be afraid of. After half a day, the three people arrived at the sky above the territory of Yuji. Outside the Ghost King Hall, the area within a radius of several dozen miles was covered by a huge formation. Dark clouds billowed, and looking down from above, it was even more eerie and frightening than the surrounding areas, making it impossible to see what was below. Bai Changchun didn't slow down at all when the three people arrived. He raised his hand and waved, pointing at the dense clouds and fog below. An incomparably powerful momentum instantly changed the color of the wind and clouds between heaven and earth. 100-meter-long cone-shaped light burst forth from the two fingers, illuminating the dark surroundings with a dense white light. It was as if dozens of thunderbolts had appeared at the same time. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out, followed by explosions of various sizes within a radius of several dozen kilometers. Yu Qianqiu was dumbstruck. He could be considered to have experienced what it meant to be the #1 expert in the world. The power of a single finger was enough to destroy the great formation that enveloped this place. The explosions in the surroundings were clearly the foundation of the formation that could not withstand such a great pressure, and collapsed one after another. The rolling dark clouds were shaken by the power of one finger, swaying to the surrounding sky, revealing the terrain below. Before Yu Qianqiu could react, he had been brought down by Bai Changchun. The three of them just happened to be standing on the cliff opposite the 9 Netherworld cavern. Ghostly wails and wolf howls rang out incessantly. Yu Qianqiu looked around and saw ghostly figures everywhere. They looked panic-stricken. They were probably frightened by the commotion caused by Bai Changchun. Nongzhu glanced at Bai Changchun and shook her head with a wry smile. Bai Changchun did not show any mercy when he fought in his own territory. He just raised his hand and completely destroyed the defensive formation. It would take a lot of effort to set it up again. Humph! Bai Changchun snorted coldly. His voice was not loud but sonorous. It spread far and wide like a substance, immediately calming all kinds of restlessness, as if nothing had happened. Yu Qianqiu secretly clicked his tongue. What was majestic? This was majestic. At this moment, Yuji had already arrived with a group of ghost generals. With just a glance, she confirmed everyone's guess. All of them rushed into the valley with pale faces and knelt down to pay their respects, singing in unison, "Greetings, Lord Torture Envoy." After that, they knelt down with their heads down, feeling very nervous. They didn't know why this great master came today, and whether it was a good or bad thing. Yu Qianqiu looked at the crowd kneeling down below, and turned to look at Bai Changchun. He saw that Bai Changchun was staring at the cave of the 9th Nether expressionlessly, not even bothering to look at the Ghost King below. So he coughed and made the decision without authorization, shouting, "Yuji, it's none of your business here. Go away. Don't disturb me without my permission." Yes. Yuji didn't dare to hesitate and quickly called the Ghost King to leave. Before leaving, Yuji looked back and saw Yu Qianqiu smiling at her. She immediately felt relieved and knew that it was really none of her business. She didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly left. When no one was disturbing them, Bai Changchun said lightly, "Yu Qianqiu, lead the way." He wanted to see if this disciple could really come and go freely in the cave of the 9th Nether. Yes. Yu Qianqiu bowed respectfully. Then he quickly jumped down the cliff. In midair, a black flying sword flashed out of his sleeve and held him up. His whole body was instantly covered with dense black fire, and he quickly flew to the cave of the 9th Nether. A layer of transparent protective upstanding chi surged out of Bai Changchun and Nongzhu's bodies. They kept a distance of 1 or 2 meters from Yu Qianqiu, not giving up. As soon as they entered the cave, it was like entering another world. The chilly wind wrapped with evil spirits was blowing continuously. Yu Qianqiu looked back. He knew that his speed was too slow for the two of them, so he didn't dare to delay. With a flick of his sleeves, 3 flying swords of blue fire immediately sprang out and spun out, illuminating the path ahead. Yu Qianqiu raised the speed of the flying swords to the limit, and followed the 3 flying swords of blue fire in the cave of the 9th nether. They didn't slow down at all when they turned around, and he made full use of his flying sword's controlling skills. What he did made Bai Changchun and Nongzhu look at each other speechlessly. Both of them had been here before, but they didn't dare to rush in the cave of the 9th nether like this. They were not afraid of the chilly wind and black evil spirits in front, but the black evil wind blades behind them were not a joke. They were the nemesis of protective upstanding qi, and they had to be careful with their cultivation. Now they followed behind Yu Qianqiu, and the black evil wind blades that shot at them at a rapid speed immediately disappeared when they touched the black fire on his body. It was the first time for the 2 masters of soul formation stage to fly in the cave of the 9th nether at such a fast speed. Nongzhu was amazed all the way. Fate made fools of people. Sure enough, everything had its vanquisher. Some things really couldn't be solved by the level of cultivation. Hey! Nongzhu, who was flying closely behind, suddenly found that there was a forked entrance in the place where they had just flown past. He was sure that he hadn't seen it when he came in before. Just at this moment, he was almost left behind by Yu Qianqiu in front of him. He was shocked and quickly followed. Without the protection of Yu Qianqiu in this place, he would be exhausted to death if he wanted to go there alone. He didn't have the ability to protect himself like Bai Changchun did. Not long after turning a corner, the wind suddenly whistled and the resistance was amazing. With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he couldn't fly against the wind at all. Standing on the flying sword, he was shaken by the wind, so he had to put away the flying sword and walk. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu didn't dare to be careless, and continued to follow behind him. After a few hours, Nongzhu saw the 8 powerful wind eyes for the first time. He had never been here before. The black evil wind blades were as numerous as tangles, which was really scary. He didn't care about his demeanor, and carefully hid behind Yu Qianqiu. Bai Changchun already had a sword in his hand. Occasionally, there were wind blades that came from tricky angles, but they were all hit by his long sword and bounced off. Presumably, when he came in before, he relied on this skill. Fortunately, it didn't take long for the tunnel dug by Yu Qianqiu to appear in front of them. After the 3 of them rushed in, they were relieved. Although the tunnel was filled with black evil spirits, with Bai Changchun's and Nongzhu's cultivation, such consumption was nothing. This is the tunnel you dug? Nongzhu looked around and asked curiously. At that time I couldn't pass through the wind eyes above, so I had to come up with this stupid way. Yu Qianqiu smiled embarrassedly. It's really stupid. It's so stupid that no one can surpass you. Nongzhu murmured softly, and then frowned and asked, just now I found another entrance in the tunnel. It didn't seem to exist when I came in before. Does it have anything to do with you? Chapter 442. Bai Changchun also looked over. Apparently, he had also found the hole. Yu Qianqiu didn't say a word as he stretched out his hand to lift the hem of his robe, and took out another storage pouch from behind him. He had no choice. The bag that he hung outside was thrown away by Nongzhu. He had already taken 2 storage bags from his chest. It would be inappropriate to take another one from his chest, so he took one from his butt. You're a genius. You can hide a storage bag on your butt. Nongzhu rolled her eyes and couldn't help but mock him. Yu Qianqiu pretended not to hear anything. He took out a flying artifact from his storage pouch and said, I heard that nether iron is very sturdy. When I went out last time, I dug up a lot of it and asked the Jing clan of the 4 major clans to forge it into a flying artifact. That hole was left when I was digging for the nether iron. He could only say this. Otherwise, his secret of coming and going without a trace would be exposed. The 2 of them looked at the flying instrument, and found that it was indeed made of nether iron. Nongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Using nether iron to build a flying instrument. You've done a lot of harm to the 9th netherworld cave. Bai Changchun's doubts were solved. He didn't stop and quickly flashed to the other end of the tunnel. Nongju shook her head speechlessly and chased after him. When Yu Qianqiu arrived at the end of the tunnel, he found that the two of them were standing in front of the glowing red hole, silently watching the majestic sea of fire of the netherworld. No one knew what they were thinking. It seemed that the two of them could resist the side effects of the sea of fire of the netherworld with their cultivation. After a long time, facing the sea of fire of the netherworld, Nongju asked without turning her head, Yu Qianqiu, how far do we need to go through the sea of fire of the netherworld to reach the gate of the underworld? Yu Qianqiu walked behind the two of them and said respectfully, not far, about 1,000 meters. Although it's not far, it's an insurmountable moat for mortals. Bai Changchun sighed. He had tried to cross the moat before but failed. He couldn't help feeling a little emotional. If Master wants to go there, I may be able to help you, Yu Qianqiu said. Bai Changchun did not say anything. Nongju turned her head and glanced at him. She knew that he was proud and arrogant. His cultivation was the best in the world. Even if he wanted to go there, he would not let his apprentice help him. If he wanted to go there, he would force his way through with his own strength. In fact, Nongju wanted to go there and have a look, but she was a little afraid of the legendary forbidden area. What's more, he was used to being free and unfettered. He was too lazy to touch anything that was too risky. After thinking about it, he restrained his curiosity. It wouldn't be fun if he didn't return. He sighed and asked, Yu Qianqiu, is there nothing else in front of the netherworld gate? Yu Qianqiu thought for a moment and said, basically, it's nothing much. There's a large stone tablet with some words written on it that forbid trespassing. Furthermore, there is some grass growing on the ground. It is the legendary resurrection grass. Since he was already here, he might as well say everything he could to prevent any new problems from arising. Reviving grass? Bai Changchun and Nongju exclaimed at the same time. The two turned around abruptly and stared at him with their eyes bursting with extraordinary splendor. Hearing that there really was a precious spirit grass that could prolong one's life, they couldn't help but exclaim no matter how high their cultivation was. Especially for a master like Bai Changchun who was about to die. It was impossible that it wasn't tempting. As a result, Yu Qianqiu was startled. He said in astonishment, Is there any problem? No problem, no problem. Nongju rubbed her hands and laughed. Well, Yu Qianqiu, I haven't seen that thing before. Please go and get some for me and let me see what it looks like. Yu Qianqiu lowered his head and pondered for a long time. He didn't answer for a long time, but he was thinking that things had to be a little complicated. If things went too smoothly, it would be suspicious. As a result, Nongju was a little anxious. Bai Changchun asked, Is there any inconvenience? Well, Yu Qianqiu shook his head slightly and then nodded. Master, I'm afraid it's a little troublesome. You can come and go freely here. What kind of trouble can there be? Nongju took a few steps closer and said suspiciously, Is there any guardian spirit beast around the resurrection grass? Or is it dangerous to pick it? Senior Nongju, you misunderstood me. I didn't mean that. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, I've destroyed a lot of the resurrection grass in that place. Now there are not many left. If you pick it without any preparation, it will only be a waste. When he said I've destroyed a lot of the resurrection grass, Bai Changchun and Nongju were a little frightened. Wait. Nongju raised her hand and said, Why don't I understand what you mean? You are a black sheep. Why did you destroy the resurrection grass? For alchemy, of course. Yu Qianqiu said frankly. Alchemy? Nongju asked and suddenly showed a look of understanding. She beat her chest and stomped her feet howling. You are such a coward. Alchemy? You are a black sheep. I understand. You can practice alchemy with anything else. Why do you have to waste this treasure? Aren't you afraid of being punished by heaven? This guy's imagination was really rich. No wonder he was a master of the soul formation stage. Yu Qianqiu curled his lips and said, Senior Nongju, you misunderstood me. I am not that stupid. At that time, I didn't pay attention to the method when I picked it. As a result, hundreds of them were destroyed. This guy had the intention to make fun of them. He pretended to be respectful, but in fact he was not happy. So he had to exaggerate to deliberately scare the two masters. He wanted to torture the two old guys in another way, so that he would feel better. Sure enough, not to mention Nongzhu, even Bai Changchun gasped. Nongzhu's face twitched and said, "You actually destroyed hundreds of resurrection grass? You are a black sheep. A real black sheep. Black sheep, tell me honestly what is going on." This resurrection grass is not a spiritual herb that belongs to the human world. When picking it, you can't touch the vitality of the human world. I didn't pay attention at that time and picked hundreds of them at once. Unexpectedly, they all turned into smoke and disappeared. Speaking of this, Yu Qianqiu could not help but shake his head with a sigh. Then he said to Nongzhu, "That's why I said that picking them without preparation can only be a waste." Nongzhu was stunned and said, "I see. So ordinary people can't pick them?" As soon as she finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand arrogantly and said, "It's not that there is no way at all. At least I got 3 of them, and made a furnace of 7 orifices exquisite pill." "You made the 7 orifices exquisite pill?" Bai Changchun and Nongzhu exclaimed again. Just as the two of them relaxed, their hearts started beating wildly again because of this fellow. People of the soul formation stage were also human. They could not resist the temptation, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Although Yu Qianqiu was complacent in his heart, he still looked calm on the surface. However, someone could not calm down. Nongzhu grabbed his clothes and said fiercely, "Boy, don't joke with me. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? How can a young man like you make the 7 orifices exquisite pill? Senior Nongzhu, I advise you to let go. I'm not afraid of you if we fight here." Yu Qianqiu said arrogantly. His words stunned Bai Changchun and Nongzhu at the same time. Nongzhu was not angry but laughed and said, "Wow, you are really powerful. I'd like to see it." With a buzz sound, a black flame suddenly burst out from Yu Qianqiu's body without warning. "Black fire!" Nongzhu screamed and quickly let go. In the blink of an eye, she was a few meters away. Then she shouted, Yu Qianqiu, how dare you fight with me? If I don't teach you a lesson today." Before she finished her words, she could not say it. Not only did Yu Qianqiu retract the black fire, but he also took out a strange red pill from the storage bag in his hand. The soft red light rippled with a blood-like luster. The originally lifeless cave entrance suddenly gave people a feeling of burning passion, forming a strong contrast with the previous scene. Anyone could see the majestic energy contained in the pill. Although the color was strange, it was not comparable to ordinary pills. Nongzhu's anger instantly subsided as if nothing had happened just now. He stared with his eyes wide open and said tongue-tied, "Yu Qianqiu, could this be the 7 orifices exquisite pill that you mentioned?" He could not help but be surprised. If it was really the 7 orifices exquisite pill, it would be amazing. If it was taken by a mortal, it could increase his life by 50 years. If it was taken by a cultivator, it was even better. It was said that it could increase his life by 150 years. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes as if he knew who Bai Changchun was. Ignoring him, he piously held the blood-red pill in his hand and walked up to Bai Changchun. With a solemn expression, he said, "Master, when I was wandering outside, I once snatched a jade archive from a wandering cultivator. Who would have thought that it was a pill recipe jade archive left by the alchemy sect thousands of years ago? From there, I learned many alchemy techniques." Bai Changchun was moved. Nongzhu was even more surprised. "The Dan sect's jade archive of the Dan sect? Let me see it." Back then, the alchemy sect had relied on their alchemy skills to stand tall in the cultivation world. However, it was precisely because there were too many people who coveted their pill recipes that the alchemy sect was exterminated. Unfortunately, although the Dan sect was destroyed, its top-secret formula was not obtained by outsiders. After the incident, the whole cultivation world could not help but sigh. If they knew this would happen, they would not have made the elixirs that could be bought in the past extinct. Although Bai Changchun and Nongzhu had lived for many years, they had only heard about the past of the Dan sect. Yu Qianqiu ignored him and continued, "Later on, this disciple was lucky enough to be accepted by Master as a disciple. In the Fey Ghost domain, all the monster kings and ghost kings presented gifts to this disciple. There was even a monster king who didn't recognize the treasure, and presented the rare spirit herb, a Dumbra flower. Hearing this, Bai Changchun and Nongzhu looked at each other. Nongzhu's expression seemed to be asking, "You didn't know there was such a treasure in your territory?" "I learned that you were near the end of your life. I knew the formula of the 7 orifices elixir, and obtained one of its main ingredients, the Adumbra flower. In addition, I heard that there was the resurrection grass in the 9th netherworld cave. Therefore, I wanted to refine the life-prolonging elixir. I ordered the monster kings and the ghost king in the demon region to collect all kinds of spiritual herbs. As a result, most of the spiritual herbs were collected, but the resurrection grass was missing. In the end, I was curious and broke into the 9th netherworld cave to find the resurrection grass." Chapter 443. Yu Qianqiu recounted the story of how he refined the 7 orifices' exquisite pellet. In short, it was a series of coincidences that led to the successful refinement of the 7 orifices' exquisite pellet. Nongzhu clicked her tongue and said, "You rascal, why do all the good things happen to you? I've lived for so many years, yet I'm not as lucky as you." "Fate brings about the birth of a spiritual pill," Bai Changchun exclaimed. Now that Yu Qianqiu had presented the pellet to him, how could he not know that his disciple was presenting it to him? Thinking about the reason, he felt that it was the will of the heavens. Just as he was nearing the end of his lifespan, he accepted this disciple. Moreover, this disciple only had the opportunity to refine such a spiritual pill because he was his disciple. Everything was predestined. The heavens clearly wanted him to live for another 100 years. Bai Changchun and Nongzhu already believed in Yu Qianqiu's words without a doubt. No one would lie on purpose to present such a heaven-defying spiritual pill. As for what he said about robbing a loose cultivator's jade archive, the two of them had no intention of pursuing the matter. The life or death of a mere loose cultivator was not worthy of their concern. From another perspective, Yu Qianqiu had even revealed the privacy of the fight. This further proved his sincerity towards his master. "Before I formally acknowledged you as my master, I had nothing on me. I didn't even have a gift. Today, I specially present a 7 orifices exquisite pellet that I personally refined. Please accept it, master." Yu Qianqiu respectfully held up the spiritual pill in his palm. This fellow seemed to like to pick the right time to present gifts. Now he was not even letting Bai Changchun go. It seemed that his nature was hard to change. If he had been refining the pellet from the beginning with Bai Changchun in mind, he might not even be able to convince himself with this reason. Bai Changchun would not be interested in ordinary items. However, this item was valuable, but it was a reasonable gift. Bai Changchun could not refuse it. After a pause he said, "I will accept your filial piety." With a wave of his palm, the spiritual pill in Yu Qianqiu's hand floated up and landed on his palm. He then kept it in his storage pouch. "Thank you, master," Yu Qianqiu said happily. "Well, Yu Qianqiu, let's discuss something," Nongzhu said with a smile. "Senior Nongzhu, please speak," Yu Qianqiu replied. Nongzhu rubbed her hands and said with embarrassment, "Didn't you say that you refined 9 pills in one furnace? Anyway, it's useless to eat too much of it. Why don't you give me one as a greeting gift?" "No," Yu Qianqiu straightforwardly refused. Nongzhu was stunned, and then her face darkened. "Old Bai, your disciple is really stingy." Bai Changchun was speechless. He understood what Nongzhu meant. She wanted him to pressure Yu Qianqiu with his identity as her master. But how could he open his mouth for such a thing? "Senior Nongzhu, it's not that I'm stingy," Yu Qianqiu explained. 9 spiritual pills are too precious. If I show my face in the cultivation world, I'm afraid it will cause a bloody storm. So I hid them all in a secret place. This time I came back to visit you, master, so I took one with me. As for the other 8, they are not with me at all." Nongzhu was stunned and said helplessly, "Okay, I won't force you. But remember to leave one for me." "No, it's 2. Zi has helped you for such a long time. No matter what, you should leave one for her, right?" "Damn it. Do you want to leave one for your woman, Jasper Flower Fairy?" Yu Qianqiu was speechless. They were both masters of Huashan realm. Why was there such a big difference in their characters? "That's it. Don't regret it." Nongzhu waved her hand and made a decision. Then she turned to the side with her eyebrows beaming. He said, eh. The other two looked at her, and saw Nongju pinching her chin while facing the wall. She said eloquently, predecessors plant trees, descendants enjoy the shade. It's sad to miss the wind. I was kind enough to dig a tunnel for the descendants to enter and exit. Yu Qianqiu? Nongju looked back at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile. It turns out that you didn't forget to leave your name after doing a good deed. It's just for fun. Yu Qianqiu said awkwardly. Didn't you say that Old Bai also left a message? Nongju looked around and walked to the opposite wall. She continued to read. I heard that Master had been here, so I also came to join in the fun. Since I couldn't go to Master's place, I went to have a try. The new generation excels the old. Each generation is stronger than the previous one. Yu Qianqiu was here? You again? Is it so fun to leave a message here? Nongju laughed happily and then looked at Bai Changchun. Old Bai, your disciple is full of ambition. Look at this sentence. The new generation excels the old. Each generation is stronger than the previous 1 foot. Tut. He wants to surpass you, the #1 master in the world. Damn. Nongju, I will *CK your daughter. Yu Qianqiu was a little flustered. He was really afraid that Bai Changchun would be unhappy. Then all his previous efforts would be in vain. He hurriedly explained, it's just a joke. Master, please don't take it seriously. So what if it's true? Bai Changchun stared at the relic left by Yu Qianqiu on the wall. He nodded slightly and said, if you can surpass me, I will only be happy and not angry. I am lonely and invincible in the world, but I have no fate to go to heaven. I have long heard that the netherworld is equal to the celestial world. I want to find a strong opponent. The fire sea of the netherworld separates the two worlds. Bai Changchun returned with hatred. Well, I don't need to look at the back to know that it's Old Bai's tone. Nongju compared their handwriting and suddenly asked, Yu Qianqiu, have you ever been educated? Ah. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and replied, I have. What's wrong? He was confused by Nongju's sudden words. Tut. No wonder you dared to leave a message in the 9th netherworld cave. Even if the ghosts and deities of the netherworld come out, I'm sure they will be scared away by your words. I, Nongju, admire you. Nongju was overjoyed and said with a smile. Yu Qianqiu was touched on the sore spot of his second life. He blushed and said angrily, Senior Nongju, do you still want the 7 orifices exquisite pill or not? Yes. I was wrong. I made a slip of the tongue. Nongju apologized, but the smile on her face became more and more arrogant. Bai Changchun couldn't help but chuckle when he heard their conversation. It could be seen that Yu Qianqiu had really integrated into this small circle. Yu Qianqiu's face was gloomy and he didn't say anything. Nongju stopped laughing and a cold light flashed out of the storage bag. He held a sword with one hand and shouted with great flourish on the wall of the netherworld iron cave. Nongju of the South Sea has been here. The sword, which was infused with strong cultivation, danced in the air and 8 elegant and refined characters appeared on the wall of the netherworld iron cave. Nongju put away the sword and even nodded with satisfaction. Yu Qianqiu looked at it, and had to admit that Nongju's handwriting was as handsome as his. However, Yu Qianqiu's face became increasingly gloomy. Of the 3 of them, his handwriting was the ugliest. It was simply shameful to display it here. He wanted nothing more than to smooth out his handwriting right now. Bai Changchun smiled and said, well, we can't stay here for long. Let's go back. After saying that, protective upstanding qi gushed out of his body and flashed away. Nongju winked at Yu Qianqiu and laughed out loud. Then, she left as well. As soon as the 3 of them left the netherworld cave, Bai Changchun grabbed Yu Qianqiu's arm again and flew to Shuntian Island. As they flew away, Yu Ji, who was standing restlessly in the hall of the Ghost King, murmured to herself, have they left? At this time, the bearded ghost General Zhang Ling came in and cupped his hands. Madam, the punishment envoy and Mr. Yu have returned. The ghost generals in the hall were relieved when they heard the news. The change of weather in the sky was too horrible. In particular, that frightening ray of light had instantly destroyed the defensive formation of this place. In the hands of such an expert, such a large formation did not even have the slightest bit of defensive ability. How could people not be terrified? The punishment envoy's means were earth-shattering once he showed them. Who is the other person beside the punishment envoy and Mr. Yu? Do any of you know him? Yuji looked around and asked. The ghost generals in the hall racked their brains, but could not think of anyone. They all shook their heads. The bearded ghost General Zhongling said in a low voice, "Madam, judging from the situation when they left, Mr. Yu's flying speed was a little slow, so he was taken away by the punishment envoy himself. The other person could catch up with the punishment envoy, so he should be a master of the Huashan realm." Another Huashan realm? The hall was full of discussion. Yuji revealed a bitter smile. The little disciple from back then was now surrounded by such powerful people. It was truly hard to predict what would happen in the world. Fortunately, she had taken a gamble back then. Thinking of this, Yuji shook her head slightly and sighed to the crowd. "We shouldn't talk about the punishment envoy. General Zhongling, give the order to rearrange the protective formation." The ghost generals obeyed the order. As soon as the three of them returned to Shentian Island, Zi, who was chatting with Lady Mu, immediately followed them. Only Lady Mu stood far away and dared not to approach without being called. They walked into the big house. Bai Changchun stood silently for a while with his back to the crowd. Then he suddenly turned around and said, "I want to take the panacea. Nongzhu, protect me. You two can leave." Nongzhu nodded seriously and said, "Yu and Yu Qianqiu are not allowed to come close without permission. Let Senior Bai be at ease and let the elixir work to its best state. You all can leave now." She took the lead and walked out of the room. When Yu Qianqiu and Zi bowed and left, they found that Nongzhu had already reached the roof and was sitting on it with her legs crossed, motionless. Seeing such a serious situation, the two secretly clicked their tongues and hurriedly walked away. When they came to the lake, Yu Qianqiu found a flat place to lie down peacefully. He crossed his legs and swung them. He was secretly proud of himself. Zi, who followed him, was full of curiosity. She sat beside him and looked around. Then she bent down and whispered in his ear, "Yu Qianqiu, what panacea does Senior Bai want to take? Tell me about it." "I can't tell you. If you want to know, ask your master." Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to one side. Zi's pretty face turned cold. She shouted in a low voice, "Are you going to tell me or not?" "No." Yu Qianqiu shook his head unwillingly. Unexpectedly, his neck was tightened. Zi turned over and sat on him. She strangled his neck and threatened, "Are you sure you won't tell me?" Such an ambiguous position, coupled with the soft buttocks on his lower abdomen, made Yu Qianqiu dumbfounded. What else could he say? Nongzhu, who was guarding on the roof, had already spread her divine sense around. Within the scope of her divine sense, even the slightest movement could not be hidden from her. Not to mention such a big movement. Nongzhu opened her eyes and mouth wide. She was so shocked that she almost fell down from the roof. Chapter 444. What a jerk. You don't need a reason to do such a strong move. I'll bear it silently. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes in satisfaction. He stretched his legs out and said nothing. He was ready not to resist and let the beauty do whatever she wanted. If you don't say it, I won't be polite anymore. Zi tightened her grip on his neck and issued an ultimatum. Scoundrel. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and muttered with great effort. Zi didn't hear it clearly. She thought she might have tightened her grip, so she loosened her grip and asked, "What pill?" "You pervert, if you don't let me go, I'll scream." Yu Qianqiu warned her clearly. Ziyi's pretty face turned frosty, and she immediately pressed down on Yu Qianqiu. She exerted force and snorted coldly. "You actually dare to scold me? We are not outside. I have to give Senior Bai face and help you." I misjudged. Nongzhu's eyes were wide open and he was sweating. He didn't expect his daughter to be so strong. He immediately shouted to Zi, "Zi, what are you doing? Get down, down." Zi looked up and saw her master staring at her from the roof in the middle of the island. It seemed to be the first time her master scolded her in such a loud voice. She stuck out her tongue and quickly slid down to sit next to Yu Qianqiu. However, She still kicked the swindlers but unwillingly. Yu Qianqiu was in pain. He covered his mouth and sat up. He was afraid of disturbing his master, so he didn't dare to cry out loud. However, it didn't stop him from staring at Zi with extreme hatred. Nongzhu was sweating profusely. He wiped his forehead subconsciously. It seemed that he had been worried that his daughter would be bullied by Yu Qianqiu. Now, it seemed that he didn't know who would be bullied. He really worried too much. Liar! Who told you not to tell? You deserve it. Zi snorted and immediately stared back with her eyes. Fine. You win. I'll give your master some face this time. If there's a next time, I'll shoot you. Yu Qianqiu warned in a serious tone. Shoot me dead. Zi pondered for a moment, and immediately thought of the spear that Yu Qianqiu had lent to Dongfang Changgao to challenge. It was indeed very powerful. Pausing for a moment, he said, Dragon-slaying spear? Don't think that I can't tell. What dragon-slaying spear? It's the same as those two broadswords. It's definitely something that you condensed from black fire to deceive people. Others may be afraid, but I'm not. Regardless of whether she was afraid or not, from her words, it could be seen that this woman had been cooped up in the southern sea purple bamboo forest for too long. She lacked knowledge, but she was not stupid. After knowing what happened to Yu Qianqiu's black flying sword, he immediately thought of where the saber and spear came from. Yu Qianqiu's face was filled with a sinister smile as he said, The Dragon Slayer spear is nothing. My hidden treasured spear specializes in killing women. I'm warning you, don't provoke me in the future. Otherwise, don't blame me for not giving face to your master. I'll kill you then. How dare you take advantage of my daughter? Nongzhu's expression twitched. If she was not afraid of disturbing the person in the room and distracting him, Nongzhu wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu right now. You still have treasures? Ziyi's eyes lit up, and she immediately became interested. She looked at him from head to toe, and a naive smile appeared on her face. She moved closer to him, and pulled on his sleeve as if she was begging. Take out your spear and let me see it. Now take it out. Yu Qianqiu looked around in the beautiful weather. When he saw the innocent pretty face again, he subconsciously shrank to the side as if he had seen a poisonous snake. He hurriedly got rid of his sleeve, cupped one hand in the other before his chest and begged for mercy. Miss Zi, I was wrong. I was talking nonsense. Please don't take it seriously. You lied to me? Zi stared at him and then shouted in a low voice, Liar! She kicked the side of Yu Qianqiu's buttocks again. He asked for it. Yu Qianqiu did not dare to complain at all. He immediately got up, ran around the lake with his tail between his legs, and ran away with his tail between his legs. Today he found that although this woman seemed to be an idiot, she was actually his nemesis. She actually wanted him to show his spear in broad daylight. Oh my! There are two masters in the Huashan realm on the island. I'm not that shameless. Ziyi saw that he ran away, but it seemed that she still did not want to let him go. She was about to follow up and kick him again. When she just stood up, she heard Nongzhu's voice in her ear. Ziyi, my good disciple, stay here, okay? You will disturb Elder Bai if you continue to make trouble. Hearing that she would disturb Elder Bai, Ziyi sat down embarrassedly. However, she still stared at Yu Qianqiu, who was running away in a wretched manner unwillingly. Nongzhu was really speechless looking at the two little enemies who were separated. Now he even suspected that Yu Qianqiu was bullied by Ziyi in this way during the time he was out. Thinking that Ziyi was spoiled by him since she was a child, he was afraid that the truth was not far from his guess. At this time, Nongzhu looked at the back of Yu Qianqiu, who was in the Huashan realm, and faintly sympathized with him. This guy even dared to fight against her, who was in the Huashan realm, in the 9th Netherworld cave, but now he was beaten up by Ziyi. It was not easy. The victim, Yu Qianqiu, found a place with lush water plants by the lake and quietly laid down. He pulled out a blade of grass and held it in his mouth. He rested his head on his arms and looked at the clear and crystalline surface of the lake thoughtfully. After being messed around by Ziyi, he couldn't help but think of Furong, who was far away on Fuxian Island. Although this girl was on Fuxian Island, and there were many people around, she was like Ziyi. She had no playmates and grew up alone. The difference between Ze and Ze was that Ze had a father who loved her dearly, so her personality was quite cheerful. That girl's personality was still very closed off. Only when she saw him would she become cheerful and rely on him. I can't leave that girl alone on Fuxian Island any longer. She'll be bored to death if she stays here for too long. It's time to bring her out to broaden her horizons. Just as Yu Qianqiu silently made this decision in his heart, he suddenly heard rustling sounds and could faintly smell the familiar faint fragrance of a virgin. He turned his head and saw Ze sitting over as if nothing had happened. What are you looking at? There's a lot of grass here. It's comfortable to sit. Ze said a reason that even she couldn't convince herself. In order to cover up the awkwardness, she brutally pulled out the grass in Yu Qianqiu's mouth, and then laid down beside him. Unknowingly, the blade of grass was in her mouth again. She didn't know what was going on. When she sat there alone just now, she felt inexplicably uncomfortable. As soon as she got close to Yu Qianqiu and smelled his scent, she felt at ease. Nongzhu stared blankly at the two people lying side by the lake. The expression on his face was unpredictable, sometimes happy and sometimes worried. His daughter's actions caused him to come to a sudden realization. After coming to a realization, he felt a faint sadness. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind. His daughter had long grown up. The person who should protect her should no longer be him, but her man. The majestic aura in the house suddenly surged rapidly, and it was quite restless. Nongzhu, who was indulging in flights of fancy, suddenly woke up. He could clearly feel that the unparalleled aura in the house seemed to be about to blow up the whole house. Even with Bai Changchun's cultivation, it was difficult for him to suppress the aura. Could there be an accident? Could it be that there was something wrong with the elixir? Nongzhu was shocked. His eyes were like a sharp knife, fiercely shooting at Yu Qianqiu who was lying by the lake. If there was really something wrong with the elixir, Nongzhu was bound to kill Yu Qianqiu in the next moment. Suddenly, the restless aura inside quickly calmed down, and then quickly converged into the body of the person in the house, turning into an excited, irrepressible roar that shook the sky. Ow! The long roar went straight to the sky, and the floating clouds in the sky began to disperse like cotton. A seemingly tangible sound wave spread far and wide in all directions. The whole Shuntian island was faintly shaking, and the vegetation on the island was shaking violently. Bai Changchun nodded slightly and said, "This pill indeed has the miraculous effect of seizing the fortune of heaven and earth. And the refining technique of the person who refined this pill can be said to be extraordinary, almost increasing the efficacy of this pill by 30%. If I'm not wrong, this old man can still live for nearly another 200 years. Chapter 445. Tut-tut. Nongzhu was amazed and circled around him several times. With more than 2,000 years of experience, Bai Changchun could tell the quality of any elixir in his mouth. There was no doubt that he was right. He is half dead. How can his elixir refining skills reach an extraordinary level? Nongzhu glanced at Yu Qianqiu on the ground and asked incredulously, "You're the one who's half dead?" Yu Qianqiu looked at Nongzhu with resentment and quickly got up from the ground. Bai Changchun knew what was good and what was bad. He would not argue with Nongzhu on this matter. The expression on his face had calmed down. He asked Yu Qianqiu, "Didn't you say that you have an idea this time? Tell me what it is." The surroundings were in a mess and did not attract his attention. Instead, he took Yu Qianqiu's matter to heart. It seemed that Yu Qianqiu's elixir was not given in vain. The weight and timing of the gift were just right. Thinking of the conversation that was interrupted when he just arrived, Yu Qianqiu calmed down and replied solemnly, "Master, this is what I think. I can't please both sides in the cultivation world of Wuxia. Instead of this, it is better to go deep into the enemy's territory and go to other countries outside of Wuxia. Maybe I can play a bigger role there." Hearing this, Nongzhu was stunned. When she came to her senses, she immediately sneered and said, "I think you really don't know what's good for you. Your master made a big fuss and made Wuxia a forbidden area for masters of Wuxia. That's why you can be so arrogant. Hee. You have nothing better to do. You want to jump out of the circle and go to other people's old nest. Little brat, let me tell you, they won't be as polite to you as me and your master. They can take your life with just a lift of their hands. Don't think that you're really that powerful. The experts in this world are far more powerful than you can imagine. No matter how powerful they are, they can't be more powerful than my master. Yu Qianqiu retorted disapprovingly. At the same time, he flattered his master. Hey, good. Nongzhu turned around and sneered at Bai Changchun. Old Bai, your disciple doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He needs to be disciplined. You have to take care of it. Don't create a short-lived ghost. Bai Changchun frowned. In terms of overall strength, the Chinese cultivation world was at a disadvantage in the conflict between the Chinese cultivation world and the cultivation world of other countries. The reason why he asked Yu Qianqiu to help the Chinese cultivation world was to train him. Now Yu Qianqiu wanted to jump out of the circle he had drawn and was willing to take greater risks. This was beyond his expectations. However, it was undeniable that the more arduous and dangerous a place was, the more it could temper a person. After weighing the pros and cons for a long time, Bai Changchun slowly opened his eyes and stared at Yu Qianqiu with his burning eyes. He said indifferently, I won't interfere with your choice, but you have to think it through. If you leave the circle of Chinese cultivation world, you will be in great danger. If something unexpected happens, even if I want to save you, I'm afraid it will be too late. Nongzhu was stunned and said in surprise, Old Bai, what do you mean? At this time, Zi had already recovered her qi circulation. She opened her eyes wide and pricked up her ears to listen. Master, you are wise. Yu Qianqiu bowed and said, Although my cultivation is not high, I have fought against 2 masters at the last stage of nature's test without being defeated. I don't think I have disgraced your reputation as the first master in the world. Master, you are the idol of your disciple. However, there is no reason for a disciple to hide under your protection for a lifetime. If one day, I want to be like you, Master, I will be at the top of the cultivation world and look down on all the others. There was no doubt that the arrogance in his words shocked Nongzhu, who lived a free and unfettered life. Bai Changchun's eyes were full of admiration. Yu Qianqiu's words touched his heart. With such a disciple, what more could he ask for? He immediately nodded and said with a smile, As I said, I won't interfere with your business. Just do what you want. This was equivalent to agreeing to Yu Qianqiu's request to leave Wuxia. Yu Qianqiu immediately bowed and said, Thank you, Master. Lunatics, one big and one small, 2 lunatics. Nongzhu had no words to describe them. She pointed at them and scolded them. Ziyi's eyes were full of splendor. Not only did Yu Qianqiu want to look down on all the others, she also admired Bai Changchun very much. She also wanted to be as powerful as Bai Changchun. She was looking forward to going out and taking risks. Maybe one day she would become a peerless master like Elder Bai. After noticing her daughter's abnormal expression, Nongzhu was shocked and knew something was wrong. She immediately said in a low voice, Old Bai, it's not that I don't want to cooperate with you, but it's too dangerous for him to go out. He may lose his life at any time. I can't let Zi take risks with him to realize his dream of reaching the top of the world. If he wants to go, let him go alone. Don't get my disciple involved. Hearing this, Ziyi's cheerful mood suddenly dropped. She pulled Nongzhu's sleeve and begged, Master, please do me a favor. Shut up. Nongzhu swung her sleeve and shouted angrily, This is no place for you to speak. Is it that I can't control you? You even dare to disobey me? Since she was a child, it was the first time for Zi to see her master being so fierce to her. She turned around and looked at Bai Changchun, begging for help. Elder Bai, please help me persuade my master. Shut up. It's useless no matter who persuades me. I will never agree. Unless you kill me now and walk out by stepping on my dead body. Nongzhu was almost roaring. Zi had never seen him like this before. She immediately shut up and looked at Yu Qianqiu from time to time, looking very pitiful. It's none of my business. Yu Qianqiu immediately lowered his head and counted the grass. 1, 2, 3, 4. He didn't want to take this girl with him anymore. In order to keep his privacy, it was inconvenient to do many things with this girl by his side. Bai Changchun understood Nongzhu's mood at this time. The purpose of making Ze come out was to protect Yu Qianqiu. However, it seemed that even he had underestimated Yu Qianqiu's ability. Now Yu Qianqiu was going to jump out of the cultivation world of Wuxia. He would face the real masters of the world. If those in the soul-forming stage wanted to attack Yu Qianqiu, Ze would not be able to protect him. Therefore, it was no longer necessary to take Ze with him. If anything happened, the relationship between him and Nongzhu would come to an end. Bai Changchun turned to face Yu Qianqiu and stared at him for a long time. Suddenly he said, "Be careful when you are alone from now on." As soon as he said this, Ziyi's hope of joining him was completely cut off. Hearing this, Ziyi was completely listless. She knew there was no hope. Nongzhu was relieved. She looked at Bai Changchun as if saying, "Old guy, you are sensible." However, it was these words that made Yu Qianqiu inexplicably feel his nose turn sour. He gritted his teeth and stiffly replied, "This disciple will follow master's instructions." Bai Changchun looked at him and smiled. He passed by them and walked slowly to the lake. He looked at the sky and the earth. His clothes were fluttering in the wind. He stared at it for a long time with his hands clasped behind his back. The few of them looked at the back of this thin figure standing against the wind. No one disturbed him, and they didn't know what he was looking at or what he was thinking, but they could taste a kind of loneliness from his back. It was the loneliness of being invincible and unable to find an opponent. It had been more than 1,000 years. "Yu Qianqiu," Bai Changchun suddenly said with his back facing them. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't know what he was going to say. He hurriedly walked behind him and saluted. "Yes, master. Although you are full of confidence this time, it is an indisputable fact that your cultivation is shallow. There is no doubt that the water incantation and fire incantation are mysterious. However, with your current cultivation, you can't exert too much power. It is really worrying when facing so many masters. I have been cultivating for many years. I want to sum up a little experience. Maybe it will be helpful to you. Are you willing to learn?" Bai Changchun said calmly, but it was no less than a thunder. Hearing this, not only Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi, but also Nongzhu's eyes lit up. Nongzhu knew that this old guy treasured his knowledge and never taught anyone anything. However, this old guy's ability was beyond doubt. What he was going to teach must be extraordinary. "I'm willing to learn." Yu Qianqiu hurriedly saluted. He thought, "It's better to give elixirs. Finally, I managed to get something out of your hands." Nongzhu, who pretended to be hostile just now, rubbed her hands and leaned over happily. She smiled and said, "Old Bai, what do you want to teach? I have good taste. Since you have made it, why don't you let me have a look? Maybe I can pick out some flaws for you." Despicable and shameless. Yu Qianqiu looked at him with unfriendly eyes, as if the meat in his mouth was about to be snatched away. Ziyi, who was at the side, stuck out her tongue and licked her lips. Her eyes were sparkling. Elder Bai's peerless magic. As a bystander, Yu Qianqiu saw it clearly. It was quite disdainful. He cursed in his heart. They are indeed father and daughter. Their behavior is exactly the same. Bai Changchun ignored Nongzhu. He turned to Yu Qianqiu and said, "I need to meditate in seclusion for 3 days. You and Miss Mu tidy up the island and come find me in 3 days." "Yes, master." Yu Qianqiu suppressed his excitement and bowed. When he stood up again, he found that Bai Changchun was gone. He looked at the big house in the center of the island and suddenly winked. What kind of peerless magic will he teach me? Anyway, I don't want to learn the sunflower manual. Alas! I'm looking forward to it. His extremely wretched expression, as if he was suffering from paranoia, made the father and daughter look down on him. Nongzhu slapped him on the back of the head and sneered. "You haven't learned the skill yet, and you're already thinking about it. What a shame." Yu Qianqiu staggered and looked back at her with a sarcastic look. But after thinking about it, he felt relieved. Damn. This old handsome guy must be jealous of me. I won't stoop to your level. Then he shook his head and walked toward the plantation. As he walked, he said, "Alas! Even Master had to meditate in seclusion for 3 days to summarize it. I really don't know if I can learn such a mysterious magic art. It's so painful. So heart-wrenching. It's so painful. God. Chapter 446. The muscles on Nongju's face twitched. She wanted to grab him and beat him up, but she resisted the urge and winked at Zi. The father and daughter were indeed connected. Zi quickly understood her master's intention and chased after Yu Qianqiu. She accompanied him and said with a smile, "Yu Qianqiu, what kind of magic do you think Elder Bai will teach you?" "Hey, master's cultivation is unfathomable. It's not something we can guess. I will learn whatever he teaches," Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. Ziyi's skin was indeed thinner than Nongju's. She asked in a roundabout way, but she didn't directly state her intentions. Yu Qianqiu happily pretended to be confused and chatted with her. The two of them went directly to the plantation. The mess in the garden made the two of them dumbfounded. The originally bright red seedlings of the deficient flame profound fruit were now lying all over the place. Not a single one could be found. It was obvious that they had all been destroyed by Changchun's roar. Miss Mu stood in the garden with a pale face. Her eyes were dull, and she seemed to have lost her soul. Not to mention Yu Qianqiu, even Zi had heard from Nongju that the deficient flame profound fruit was prepared for the Nanming ancestors' mount. It was of great significance to Bai Changchun. She didn't know what would happen if Bai Changchun knew that all the deficient flame profound fruit had been destroyed. A mere Miss Mu couldn't bear Bai Changchun's anger. Yu Qianqiu walked into the messy garden and walked to Miss Mu's side. He sighed slightly, knowing that this woman was frightened. He patted her shoulder and shouted, "Miss Mu!" Miss Mu suddenly turned around and saw Yu Qianqiu. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. She shouted, "Mister! Don't worry, this has nothing to do with you. I will explain to Master and plead on your behalf. I think Master won't make things difficult for you." Yu Qianqiu comforted her. Hearing him plead on her behalf, Miss Mu immediately thanked him profusely. Although she was still frightened, at least she had a chance to live. "Don't think too much. Master wants us to tidy up the island," Yu Qianqiu called out to her, and the two of them immediately got to work. Perhaps Miss Mu was thinking of atoning for her sins, so she put in extra effort. As for Zi, who was following him around, he needed her help. It would be a waste if he did not use her. Yu Qianqiu had tricked her into going with him. Now he had another good helper. The three of them worked together. 3 days later, Yu Qianqiu could not wait to come to the front of the big house. He suppressed the excitement on his face and walked in with his hands clasped behind his back. Bai Changchun held a jade archive in his hand. Nongju and her father kept glancing back and forth at it, as if they were trying to decipher its mysteries. When he saw Yu Qianqiu come in, Bai Changchun loosened his grip. The jade archive slowly floated up and was delivered to the former. With a pious expression, Yu Qianqiu took the archive with both hands. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Master." He glanced at Nongju and her father, then deftly stuffed it into his storage pouch. Outside, Miss Mu walked to the front door with a miserable expression. She lowered her head and knelt down in front of Bai Changchun. Everyone in the house turned to look at her. She was summoned by Yu Qianqiu. Naturally, Yu Qianqiu had to make an appearance. He was also a little nervous, but he still braced himself and reported, "Master, the garden that Miss Mu was taking care of was destroyed by your long whistle 3 days ago. She has come to ask for forgiveness from you." Bai Changchun frowned. He quickly released his divine sense and had a clear picture of the garden. Although he knew that he was the one who destroyed it, his expression still darkened. His gaze was so intense that Miss Mu couldn't help but tremble. Yu Qianqiu knew that things were not looking good. A monster king was not even as good as an ant in the old man's eyes. If he didn't say anything, Miss Mu would probably die. Hence, he promptly bowed and pleaded, "Master, I was the one who brought Miss Mu to Obedient Island. I didn't take care of the profound fruit garden and destroyed Master's profound fruit. I chose the wrong person, so I can't escape responsibility. Master, please punish me as well." Hearing this, Miss Mu bowed and kowtowed. Although the expression on her face couldn't be seen clearly, it could be seen that her delicate body was trembling slightly, as if she was sobbing softly. To be honest, not to mention Bai Changchun, even Nongju didn't think much of Miss Mu. A mere monster king. Usually when they saw her, they only thought that she was doing odd jobs on Obedient Island. Now, seeing Yu Qianqiu pleading in a disguised way, Nongzhu couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Others might not know, but Nongzhu knew that Old Man Bai had clearly decided that Yu Qianqiu would be the successor of the Demon Ghost region's torturer. Yu Qianqiu was pleading on behalf of this monster king. Obviously, the relationship between the two was not shallow. Although this monster king was just doing odd jobs now, once Yu Qianqiu became the torturer in the future, this monster king's status in the Demon Ghost region would definitely rise. Maybe he would be above everyone else. With this thought, Nongzhu couldn't help but look at Miss Mu a few more times. Subconsciously, she had already begun to take her seriously. Bai Changchun's eyes paused on Yu Qianqiu's face for a while, then moved to Miss Mu, who was kneeling on the ground. His face returned to normal, and he said to her, "This is none of your business. You can leave now." Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu was instantly relieved. This meant that Bai Changchun wouldn't pursue the matter further. Miss Mu didn't say anything. She just kowtowed a few times, then stood up and slowly retreated. When she turned around to leave, her eyes swept across Yu Qianqiu, full of infinite gratitude. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. After all, he and this monster king had a physical relationship. Although he didn't do anything out of line, he did serve him wholeheartedly. Just based on this, he should help him. Ahem. Nongzhu cleared his throat, breaking the silence in the room. He crossed his hands, turned to face Bai Changchun, and snorted coldly. "Old Bai, you can't be like this. My Zi listened to your orders and protected your disciple for such a long time. Even if she didn't do anything meritorious, she still worked hard. As an elder, you should at least do something for her." "What do you want me to do?" Bai Changchun asked calmly. "Do you think I'll let you go through so much trouble?" Nongzhu turned to Yu Qianqiu, tilted his chin and said, "Just use what he has. That magic art you gave him just now, let Zi bask in the glory and learn it." "Damn it. Old people who don't die are thieves." Yu Qianqiu squinted at Nongzhu, as if he was guarding against a thief. Bai Changchun said expressionlessly, "That won't do. That's for my disciple." "That's easy. Worst comes to worst. Zi can also be your disciple. I won't have any objections." Nongzhu turned around and shouted, "Zi, come and be my disciple." Ah. Zi was stunned. She was a little suspicious and asked pitifully, "Master, don't you want me anymore?" "Nonsense." Nongzhu stared at her and reprimanded. "Isn't it good to have two masters? With two masters supporting you, who would dare to bully you in the future?" Yu Qianqiu looked at this guy and was speechless. It was true that the more handsome a man was, the more shameless he was. The more handsome a man was, the more annoying he was. Zi hesitantly walked to Bai Changchun. Although she really wanted to be Bai Changchun's disciple, she always felt it was inappropriate. But before she opened her mouth, Bai Changchun shook his head and said, "I don't accept female disciples." His words made Zi stiff. "Old Bai." Nongzhu was about to act shamelessly, but Bai Changchun raised his hand and interrupted her. "You don't have to be my disciple. It's not impossible to learn, but I have a condition." "What condition?" Nongzhu asked carefully, as if she was worried that there was a trap in front of her. Chapter 447. Bai Changchun didn't beat around the bush and said directly, "You know, before I go to the Eastern Holy Land, I need Nanming to refine a suitable spiritual treasure for me. Now that the deficient flame profound fruit has been destroyed, I'm afraid he can't come. If you can help me get him here, Zi will have a share of this incantation. Of course, the premise is that he's willing to help me refine the treasure." That old guy has a strange temper. I'm afraid he won't give me face." Nongzhu pinched her chin and thought. Suddenly, her expression turned fierce and she said, "Why are you being so polite to him? Just tie him up. He's no match for you." "Do I need you to remind me if it works?" Bai Changchun asked indifferently. Nongzhu smiled awkwardly and said, "That's true. That guy doesn't listen to persuasion or force. It's useless to tie him up. Maybe we'll tie him up and worship him, let alone refine anything." Then her face turned bitter and she spread out her hands. I don't know what to do. Old Bai, you're clearly making things difficult for me. A dark shadow flashed out of Bai Changchun's storage bag and floated in front of Nongju. It was dark and dull. It was the sky-swallowing beast's fang that Yu Qianqiu sawed off from the underworld gate. Nongju slapped her forehead and suddenly said, "How could I forget about this thing? Take it and I'll make sure Nanming follows me obediently. There's no time to lose. I'll go now and come back early." She grabbed it in her hand, looked at it and stuffed it into her storage bag. Just as she turned around, she stopped and said, "Old Bai, let's make this clear first. I only care about bringing Nanming here. As for whether he agrees to refine the treasure for you or not, it's not something I can force." Bai Changchun neither agreed nor objected. He just sat there without saying a word. Nongju smiled and said, "If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. Don't regret it when the time comes." "Okay. I'll go to Xianxian Island and bring Nanming here." As soon as she finished speaking, she disappeared in the blink of an eye. Outside, there was the sound of rapid flying. Ziyi looked outside and was slightly stunned. She also knew that her master had made this trip because of her. "Master, what kind of person is that patriarch Nanming? He didn't even give face to you?" Yu Qianqiu asked, puzzled. This was not the first time he had heard someone mention ancestor Nanming. Even the #1 expert in the world Bai Changchun had to spend a lot of effort to plant the deficient flame profound fruit in order to cater to this person. Bai Changchun now had high hopes for Yu Qianqiu. Naturally, he would not be stingy in teaching him about the stories of these top figures in the cultivation world. He said slowly, "There are 5 great people in the cultivation world today, and Nanming is one of them. This person's cultivation level has already reached the mid-stage of deity transformation. Although his cultivation level isn't the highest, when it comes to tool refinement, if he says he's #2, no one would dare to say they're #1. He's the #1 tool refinement expert in the cultivation world. 5 great men of the cultivation world? Was there such a thing? I'm afraid you're one of them." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "No wonder Senior Nongju said he has a strange temper. It turns out that he's arrogant because of his talent." "You can't say that." Bai Changchun shook his head slightly and said, "Since the ancient war, there hasn't been a tool refinement expert in the cultivation world who can refine spirit treasures." Nanming's sudden appearance attracted many people's covetous eyes. They all wanted to take him under their command, and there were even people who threatened and tempted him. Nanming could be said to be annoyed, so he lived in seclusion on Xianxian Island. It's very difficult for ordinary people to invite him. I've also helped him solve some problems. In order to return the favor, he refined a treasure for me once. Unfortunately, the success rate of refining a high-grade spirit treasure is too low, so he failed. Yu Qianqiu secretly guessed that the so-called problem solved was probably to scare off those people who threatened and tempted ancestor Nanming. Otherwise, why would he need to ask the #1 expert in the world to solve the problem? This master is a super expert in fighting. Since it's so difficult to invite the ancestor Nanming, then why was master able to invite him again after planting the deficient flame profound fruit? Is it just because his mount likes to eat the deficient flame profound fruit? Yu Qianqiu asked the doubt in his heart. Bai Changchun explained with unprecedented patience, "Because the last refining failed, he felt that he hadn't repaid my favor. However, he couldn't break his own rules and easily make a move, so he gave me some deficient flame profound fruit seeds. He asked me to gather all the refining materials, and when the deficient flame profound fruit ripens, I can invite him again. There are 3 chances in total, and no matter whether the refining is successful or not, the favor he owes me will be written off." Then Senior Nongju was able to invite the ancestor Nanming over with just a beast-tooth pride from the underworld gate? Yu Qianqiu asked respectfully. It sounded like he was humbly asking for advice. Ziyi listened quietly at the side, not daring to disturb them. In front of Senior Bai, she didn't dare to behave too atrociously. Bai Changchun also answered without hesitation. This is the rule he set. Whoever can give him precious materials that can move his heart can invite him out of Xianxian Island. As for the grade of the treasure he is invited to refine, it depends on whether the materials given to him are sufficient. I see. Yu Qianqiu was deep in thought. Suddenly, he remembered the 5 great men of the cultivation world. He couldn't help but ask again. Master, you mentioned the 5 great men of the cultivation world. Besides the ancestor Nanming, who are the other 4? Hearing this, Ziyi looked at Bai Changchun with a strange light in her eyes. Obviously, she knew that one of the 5 great men of the cultivation world was the thin old man in front of her. Bai Changchun said slowly, besides Nanming of Xianxian Island, there is also Wen Lanfeng of Baiwan Nation and Lu Yanqing of Lingfang Valley. There is also the world's #1 fortune teller, Great Master Tianju. He was the one who predicted that the star orb would appear in the Chinese cultivation world. However, he has already passed away. To be precise, there are only 4 of the 5 great men left. He stopped here, not saying the 5th one. In fact, Yu Qianqiu had already guessed it was him. He was definitely too embarrassed to say that he was one of the 5 great men. Ziyi stuck out her tongue and said to Yu Qianqiu playfully, "The last one is the leader of the 5 great men, Senior Bai himself." "I've already guessed it. Master is the world's #1 expert. If even you can't be one of them, then I'm afraid the 5 great men don't deserve their reputation." Yu Qianqiu flattered him again. Then he turned to stare at Ziyi and frowned. "So you already knew? Why haven't I heard you mention it before?" Ziyi glared at him and immediately retorted, "You didn't ask me. I thought you already knew. Who knew that you didn't even know about this?" "Okay, you're knowledgeable." Yu Qianqiu didn't want to argue with her in front of his master, so he asked, "Then tell me why Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing can be one of the 5 great men in the cultivation world." Ziyi glanced at Bai Changchun. Seeing that there was nothing strange about him, she immediately said with a hint of boasting, "Baiwan Nation's Wen Lanfeng is also a late-stage soul transformation expert. And not just any late-stage soul transformation expert. He is ranked 2nd in the cultivation world after Senior Bai, 2nd only to Senior Bai. He is also one of the 5 great men of the cultivation world, because of his extraordinary cultivation." Wen Lanfeng of Baiwan Nation? Yu Qianqiu secretly remembered this person. In the soul formation stage, people who could reach a cultivation level 2nd only to Bai Changchun must be extraordinary. He had to be careful in the future. Speaking of this, Ziyi suddenly had an expression of admiration on her face. This made Yu Qianqiu very curious. He thought to himself, could there be someone more admired by this girl than Bai Changchun? Ziyi continued in high spirits. Senior Lu Yanqing of Lingfang Valley is a female senior. Her cultivation has also reached the middle stage of soul formation. She's the best healer in the cultivation world. It's said that as long as someone is still breathing, she can save them. And what? Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. He thought to himself, is this girl a fan of Lu Yanqing? Although I haven't seen Senior Lu Yanqing, I heard that she's the most beautiful woman in the world. Countless experts in the cultivation world admire her appearance and pursue her, but none of them can enter her eyes. Even Senior Wen Lanfeng, one of the 5 great men, fought with Senior Bai for her. Ziyi stuck out her tongue at this point. She looked at Bai Changchun and didn't dare to continue. Yu Qianqiu saw that she wanted to say something but stopped. Coupled with the words she hadn't finished before, he suddenly became suspicious. He thought to himself, could it be that the most beautiful woman in the world is so beautiful that the #1 and #2 experts are jealous of each other? So the 2 peerless experts fought over a woman? F***ck. This news is a little too shocking. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered as he glanced at his master. He didn't dare to look him in the eye, but he didn't dare to continue asking lest he touched old man Bai's sore spot. However, his heart was full of guesses. It seemed that the most beautiful woman in the world wasn't with old man Bai. Could it be that old man Bai, the #1 expert in the world, couldn't win against the #2 expert in the world for the most beautiful woman in the world? What a piece of gossip. When Bai Changchun saw Yu Qianqiu's wretched and lascivious expression, he immediately knew that his disciple was thinking beyond the clouds. He immediately said to Ziyi, he doesn't know much about this level. Since you've already said it, tell him the whole story. Otherwise, he'll only know a little and make wild guesses. Yes. Ziyi bowed. Since old man Bai had spoken, she had nothing to worry about. She continued to say to Yu Qianqiu, I heard that Senior Wen Lanfeng is one of the craziest pursuers of Senior Lu Yanqing, but Senior Lu Yanqing doesn't like him. Until one time, Senior Lu was pestered by Senior Wen to the point where she couldn't do anything. She said to Senior Wen that as long as you can defeat the world's #1 expert, Bai Changchun, I'll become your Taoist companion. Ah! Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. It was completely different from his previous guess. It turned out that the world's #2 expert was a love-struck fool. Needless to say, it must be that Bai Changchun had inexplicably fought with this love-struck fool. Ziyi secretly glanced at Bai Changchun and stuck out her tongue again. She said, I heard from my master that after Senior Wen heard Senior Lu's words, he immediately sought out Old Man Bai for a duel. Old Man Bai felt it was a little strange at that time. After learning of Senior Wen's intention, he suddenly flew into a rage and attacked mercilessly. As a result, Senior Wen was seriously injured in less than 10 moves. If it wasn't for my master stopping him, I'm afraid Senior Wen wouldn't have been able to keep his life. After that, I heard that Senior Wen never went to find Senior Lu again, and has been cultivating in Baiwan country. Chapter 448. Speaking of this, Bai Changchun still didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he thought about it. At that time, when he heard that Wen Lanfeng's cultivation was profound, he had long wanted to spar with Wen Lanfeng. But when he heard about Wen Lanfeng's infatuated behavior, he felt deeply ashamed. He felt that Wen Lanfeng's cultivation couldn't be that high, and it wasn't worth it for him to fight. So he had never looked for Wen Lanfeng. However, the weather was unpredictable. He didn't look for Wen Lanfeng, but Wen Lanfeng looked for him instead. At that time, Bai Changchun thought that he must have misunderstood him. This must be an extraordinary man who stood at the peak of the cultivation world, and was as lonely as him, searching for experts to spar with. Who would have thought that Wen Lanfeng would actually come to challenge him because of that Lu woman's excuse? Did he really think he was someone important? Bai Changchun was almost angered to the point smoke came out of his nose. He didn't say a word before grabbing onto Wen Lanfeng and giving him a beating Wen Lanfeng to the point he didn't have the strength to resist at all. Only then did Wen Lanfeng realize that the #1 expert in the world was not someone he, the so-called #2 expert in the world, could compare to. The difference in strength between the two was huge. Fortunately, at the critical moment when his life was at stake, Nongzhu, who had some friendship with him, heard the news and rushed over. Finally, she helped him escape from Bai Changchun. After letting Wen Lanfeng go, Bai Changchun thought about it for a few days. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. That woman surnamed Lu in Spirit Fang Valley really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She was the one who caused the mess, and she actually dared to use him as a shield. She was simply reckless. So he went to Spirit Fang Valley to find Lu Yan to settle the accounts. In fact, Lu Yanqing did not expect that Wen Lanfeng would really dare to go to Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun was recognized as the #1 expert in the cultivation world. Who could be his opponent? How many people would dare to cause trouble for Bai Changchun? She believed that by mentioning Bai Changchun, she would be able to scare Wen Lanfeng. However, the determination of that infatuated woman made her speechless. After Wen Lanfeng was defeated, he dragged his body with serious injuries to Lingfang Valley and bid farewell to Lu Yanqing with a desolate face. He said that he would look for her on the day he could defeat Bai Changchun. Otherwise he would not see her again, so he dragged his injuries back. After this, he really didn't meet with Lu Yanqing again. It didn't matter if he left, but it gave Lu Yanqing a fright. Bai Changchun was a famous madman in the cultivation world. He had always been the one who provoked others. No one dared to provoke him. If Bai Changchun knew that he was the one who instigated Wen Lanfeng to challenge him to a duel, he would definitely not let him off. Sure enough, her guess was right. Not long after Wen Lanfeng left, Bai Changchun arrived. Goodness gracious! Those so-called experts of the cultivation world who wanted to go to Spirit Fang Valley to get close to it were so scared that they ran away, for fear that they would get into trouble. Those people, who were usually willing to go through mountains of swords and seas of fire for her, All seemed so pale and powerless the moment Bai Changchun arrived. She couldn't even find a single person to speak up for her, and they all slipped away. Through this lesson, Lu Yanqing could be considered to have thoroughly seen the true face of these men. In comparison, Wen Lanfeng made her feel more gratified. Although his infatuated appearance could not make him the man in her heart, he dared to fight with Bai Changchun just because of her excuse. This really moved her a little. Even when Lanfeng was no match for Bai Changchun, Lu Yanqing knew that she was no match for him. So she simply admitted her mistake and let Bai Changchun deal with her. At this time Nongzhu, who had some friendship with her, came again like a timely rain. She stopped Bai Changchun and praised Lu Yanqing's countless merits and virtues, and finally made Bai Changchun show mercy. However, the death penalty could be avoided, but the punishment could not be forgiven. Under the repeated obstruction of Nongzhu, Bai Changchun still abruptly abolished Lu Yanqing's cultivation of 200 years, and beat her from the middle stage of Huashan realm to the early stage of Huashan realm. However, Lu Yanqing had managed to save her life, and this matter had been resolved just like that. As Bai Changchun silently recalled the above events, Zi also repeated them. What she said was what she had heard from her master, Nongzhu. Yu Qianqiu was inwardly astounded when he heard this. This master of his simply slaughtered in all directions. He really was unrivaled under the heavens, truly awe-inspiring. However, he also heard another clue from it, that was Nongzhu had a wide network of friends all over the world, and there were people he was rushing to save everywhere. Yu Qianqiu looked at Zi and saw that she still had the greedy look of admiring the first beauty in the world. He suddenly rolled his eyes and thought, "Do you know what a beauty is?" What made Yu Qianqiu most curious was what the first beauty in the world looked like. She could actually make so many knowledgeable masters in the cultivation world flock to her. If there was a chance, he must go and see her. He thought that Nongzhu had seen the first beauty in the world, and was familiar with her. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but imagine in his heart. From the precedent of that guy flirting with Jasper Flower Fairy, it could be seen that Nongzhu was very picky and good at choosing women. Could it be that he liked Lu Yanqing and kicked Jasper Flower Fairy? That was a very possible thing. Master, since your life has been extended by 200 years, why do you still want to risk your life in the Eastern Holy Land? Yu Qianqiu asked. When he thought of Nongzhu going to Xianxian Island to invite the Nanming ancestor, he thought of the reason why Bai Changchun asked the Nanming ancestor to refine an artifact. He had already said that it was to prepare for the trip to the Eastern Holy Land. Bai Changchun looked back at him and smiled, but didn't explain further. He just said, "Why don't you postpone your trip to the various countries? First, take a look at the Jade Archive I gave you. If you can master the information in it, it will be very beneficial for your future journey." Yu Qianqiu was stunned when he heard this. He took out the Jade Archive again, and inserted his divine sense into it. The more he looked at it, the more confused he became. There was no peerless Xian skill or incantation like he had imagined. Instead, it was filled with all kinds of birds and beasts. There were so many of them, it was a dazzling sight. To put it bluntly, it was a dazzling sight. However, there were words beside each bird and beast, which summarized the movement patterns of those birds and beasts, and then transformed them into movements that could be learned by humans. Yu Qianqiu looked at it. Why did it feel like the tiger and crane dual forms martial arts he had seen in his previous life? It was definitely not an incantation. After he retracted his divine sense, he asked doubtfully, "Master, what kind of incantation is this? Why can't I understand it?" Zi, who was at the side, pouted slightly as if saying, "I'm afraid you're not talented enough. If you can't understand it, you might as well just give it to me. Cultivation is not something that is innate. It is something that is accumulated through cultivation. Your cultivation is shallow, so it is impossible for me to help you reach the heavens in a single step. However, when facing an enemy, the level of one's cultivation is important, but it is definitely not the only key to victory or defeat. Treasures, the mysteriousness of incantations, and the ability to adapt to the enemy are also indispensable. You won't deny this, will you?" Bai Changchun asked. "Yes, I rely on the mysteriousness of incantations to defeat stronger opponents." Yu Qianqiu nodded. Zi, who was at the side, was also listening attentively. She did not want to miss a single word. Hearing this, she nodded as well. In terms of the mysteriousness of incantations, the water and fire incantations are truly miraculous. Almost no one in this world can surpass you. To increase your cultivation, you need to rely on your own hard work and accumulation. As for treasures, I don't have them with me. The only thing I can teach you is the ability to adapt to the enemy. Bai Changchun pointed at the jade archive in his hand and smiled faintly. I understand the mysteriousness of heaven and earth. All my adaptability is integrated into the jade archive in your hand. Ziyi's eyes shone brightly. She stared at the jade archive in Yu Qianqiu's hand. She almost wanted to snatch it. Yu Qianqiu looked at the jade archive in his hand and opened his mouth. He really did not know what to say. Could it be that his comprehension was too poor and he could not understand it? Bai Changchun nodded and said, I have experienced countless battles. In my early years, I have also faced situations where I defeated stronger opponents. I did not rely on treasures, nor did I rely on the mysteriousness of incantations, or the depth of my cultivation. Instead, I relied on my strong adaptability. In a battle, if I can avoid a fatal blow at a critical moment, I will be victorious. In an impossible situation, if I can deal a fatal blow to my opponent, I will also be victorious. This is the ability to adapt to the enemy. I understand what Master is saying. Yu Qianqiu held the jade archive in his hand and said in a low voice, This, Master, did you take the wrong jade archive? These are all about birds and beasts. That's right. Bai Changchun raised his hand slightly and interrupted him. In this world, the adaptability of birds and beasts is the best adaptability of natural selection. For example, the timing of the attack of a goshawk hunting a rabbit requires extraordinary acuity. This is not something an ordinary person can achieve. If you can familiarize yourself with everything recorded in this jade archive, you will naturally discover the beauty of it when the time comes. I have spent hundreds of years perfecting this with my blood and sweat. Hearing this, Ziyi seemed to be deep in thought. Although Yu Qianqiu understood what he meant, he still felt that it was a little out of place, and that it was inappropriate for him to say anything more. Seeing that he was still confused, Bai Changchun reminded him, Once you have familiarized yourself with it, when you face an enemy, you will realize that no matter how powerful an expert is, with your acute senses, they will still be full of flaws in your eyes. Regardless of whether you can win or not, whether you can attack, defend, or evade, you will already have a 70% confidence in your heart. You must know that in critical moments, the slightest difference can lead to a huge error. It is often the moment of victory and defeat, the moment of life and death. To be able to predict the enemy's moves, is this not enough for you to use for the rest of your life? Damn. You should have said so earlier. You talked about eagles and rabbits. I thought you had drawn an animal world to teach me to love wild animals. Yu Qianqiu looked as if he had suddenly realized something. But to say that he had truly understood everything was not necessarily true. But he remembered that as long as he was familiar with it, he would be able to predict the enemy's moves. That would be amazing. At critical moments, it would be of great use. Thank you, Master, for fulfilling my wish. Yu Qianqiu bowed respectfully with a face full of joy. He stood up and asked, May I know the name of this technique that Master has imparted to me? Bai Changchun paused for a moment. After thinking for a while, he said, It can't really be considered a technique. This is the first time I've come up with it, and it doesn't have a name yet. Since it comes from birds and beasts, let's call it animal play. Chapter 449. Animal Tricks? Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. He immediately thought of the words animal tricks, but felt that it had tarnished his future student. Hence, he quickly thought of the 5 animal tricks he had heard of in his previous life. It seemed that the fellow named Hua Tua had also created these tricks based on animals. He immediately felt more at ease. This disciple shall diligently comprehend them. Yu Qianqiu immediately bowed and retreated. When he found out that the world of animals in this jade archive would be of great benefit to him, He made up his mind to learn them, and he would learn them with all his might. He didn't have many good points, but he was able to endure hardships and was ruthless to himself. He comforted himself by saying that this was called making up for one's lack of talent with diligence. Once he left, Zi couldn't stay still any longer. She dawdled to Bai Changchun's side and stammered, "Senior Bai, my master. My master has already gone to invite the Southern Ming ancestor for you. Can Zi learn the animal tricks you taught Yu Qianqiu?" Towards the end, she seemed to feel a little embarrassed, and her voice was so soft that it was almost inaudible. Fortunately, Bai Changchun's cultivation level was high, and his hearing was good as well. He nodded at her. Zi was so happy that she almost jumped up. She quickly bowed and said, "Zi thanks Senior Bai for his help. Zi will take her leave now." After she finished speaking, she slipped away and went to look for Yu Qianqiu. Bai Changchun smiled, then went to his usual seat and sat down cross-legged. Actually, when Nongzhu suggested letting Zi learn, he had never thought of rejecting her due to their relationship. Otherwise, with the things that Yu Qianqiu had obtained from the gate of the underworld, it wouldn't be difficult for him to invite the Southern Ming ancestor. Hence, he wasn't trying to make things difficult for Nongzhu. It was just that his cultivation level was passable, and his speed was fast, so he asked him to run errands. Once Zi left, she quickly looked around. It had only been a short while, but Yu Qianqiu was nowhere to be seen. How dare he try to hog all the good stuff for himself? How infuriating! He couldn't possibly have escaped from Shuntian Island, could he? Thus, he quickly rose into the sky and circled around in all directions, but he did not see anyone. Given that fellow's cultivation, even if he were to fly away in such a short period of time, it would be impossible for him to escape his line of sight. He immediately deduced that Yu Qianqiu must be hiding somewhere on the island, so he launched a carpet search. Yu Qianqiu had long known that this little girl would not let him go. For the sake of freedom, he hid in the bird's nest that he had built in the past. He held the jade archive in his hands and studied it in detail. Once he had a rough idea of what was going on, he would begin to practice madly. Helplessness Island was only so big, so Zi quickly locked onto the bird's nest. With a flash, she leaped into the nest to take a look. Sure enough, this fellow was hiding here, hugging the jade archive and enjoying it all by himself. "What are you doing here?" Yu Qianqiu cautiously put away the jade archive. "Give it to me." Zi reached out her hand and demanded without hesitation. "Take what?" Yu Qianqiu pretended not to know. Zi glared at him and said, "Hurry up and hand over Elder Bai's animal tricks. Elder Bai has already agreed to let me learn it." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Since she dared to say such words on Obedient Island, his master must have really agreed to it. However, he had yet to learn it. If he gave it to her first, when would it be his turn? He immediately rejected her. "Nonsense. Wait until your master brings the Nanming ancestor here." "Are you going to give it to me or not?" Zi gritted her teeth, as if she was about to snatch it from him. Yu Qianqiu's expression darkened. "Don't get it wrong. This is Obedient Island, not your purple bamboo forest in the southern seas. It's not your place to be unreasonable. If you dare to cause trouble, my master will kick you out of Obedient Island." His words were a little threatening, but to Zi it was quite effective. "You," Zi said angrily. "Then come with me to reason with Elder Bai." "Why should I? My master passed it down to me. Even if you want to learn it, I have to finish learning it first before you can learn it." Yu Qianqiu started to act shamelessly. Although Bai Changchun was sitting in the big house, he knew everything that was going on. Obedient Island hadn't been this lively for a long time. He shook his head and transmitted his voice. "Yu Qianqiu, make a copy for her." Yu Qianqiu, who was about to start a big fight, was stunned. He helplessly bowed towards the big house and said, "Yes, disciple understands." He then turned back to Zi and snorted, "My master is merciful and asked me to make a copy for you. Don't mess with me anymore. If I make a mistake, don't blame me." Zi was also stunned. She immediately understood that Bai Changchun transmitted his voice to Yu Qianqiu, so she also bowed in the direction of the big house. Truth be told, Yu Qianqiu was very displeased. He had painstakingly gone through life and death situations to get to where he was today. It wasn't easy for him to get something from the master of the world's #1 expert. This girl who got in through the back door insisted on sharing the fruits of his labor. It was really infuriating. However, there was nothing he could do about it. He could only take out 2 jade archives and obediently make a copy. After handing the jade archives to Ze, he didn't forget to remind her. Ze, you must remember this well. These are my master's hard work. You can't just pass them on to others. Yes. I understand. I won't let Elder Bai's hard work fall into the hands of others. After Ze received the jade archives, she was very satisfied. At the same time, she thought that Bai Changchun had asked Yu Qianqiu to pass on the message. She decided to carry it out loyally. We need some peace and quiet now. Please don't disturb me anymore. Yu Qianqiu gestured towards the outside of the bird's nest. Ziyi's face was filled with excitement as she grasped the jade archives. With a swoosh, she dashed out of the nest and found a place to comprehend it on her own. Yu Qianqiu finally felt at ease and came to see her. In the end, he found himself hiding in the bird's nest for an entire day and night, forgetting to eat and sleep. Cultivators in the world of cultivators, after more or less training, had a much higher ability to comprehend things than mortals. Yu Qianqiu fumbled around for an entire day before he finally understood the gist of it. The contents of this jade archive were quite different from what he knew in the world of cultivators. It was similar to the martial arts that evolved from the animals he knew in his previous life. However, there were far more types of martial arts than those he had seen in his previous life. This jade archive recorded over 1,000 representative animal movements. After he transformed into his human form and practiced, Bai Changchun added a path for the circulation of his true core to each set of diagrams, perhaps in order to make his movements more similar to those of an animal. He must have put in a lot of effort. Yu Qianqiu was truly impressed by this master of his. He dared to guarantee that this set of diagrams was not only beneficial to cultivators, it could also be used by mortals to strengthen their bodies. It was as if he had created a form of fitness exercise. He just didn't know how effective it would be after he practiced it. Was it really as miraculous as he said? But for the time being, he had to believe it. Who told him to be the #1 expert in the world? Without the flame-deficient profound fruit, the soft, flat, and spacious plantation had become a good place for him to practice his martial arts. After memorizing a few sets of corresponding true core circulation paths, he practiced with tigers, eagles, snakes, monkeys, and so on. He seemed to be enjoying himself, but in his heart he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was this something that a cultivator should be doing? However, he didn't know that when his actions fell into Bai Changchun's eyes, Bai Changchun was greatly shocked. An ordinary person would find it hard to accept something that he had created himself. He was afraid that it could be described as unreasonable. He didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would be able to practice it so quickly. Moreover, he was able to practice it well. Moreover, his body and spirit were similar. His perception was simply extraordinarily high. It was really beyond his expectations. Bai Changchun cried out in his heart. Accepting this disciple was definitely the will of the heavens. A strong sense of satisfaction lingered in his chest. With such a disciple, what more could he ask for? Subconsciously, he had already regarded this disciple as a treasure. He reckoned that if anyone dared to touch Yu Qianqiu now, they would definitely be slaughtered by him without saying a word. How could he know that Yu Qianqiu had seen too many similar movies and TV shows in his previous life? Moreover, because he was in the underworld, in order to better defend himself, he had also learned a lot of martial arts and the like. Although he couldn't be said to be proficient in any of them, he had dabbled in them quite a bit. These things were simply a piece of cake for him. The only difference was that there was true core circulating within his body. I can predict the enemy's moves. I will ruthlessly practice. Old man Bai, don't you dare play with me. Filled with grief and indignation, Yu Qianqiu practiced hard without end. He cursed in his heart. What the hell is this? On the other hand, Ziyi was already confused by the contents of the jade archive. After looking at it for the whole day, she still couldn't understand what it was. Her head was filled with confusion, and she almost went crazy. What the hell is this? Why is there even a monkey? How is a girl supposed to practice this? It must be Yu Qianqiu, that bastard, messing with me on purpose. With Senior Bai's profound cultivation, how could he have made something like this? So disgusting. There's even a snake. Ziyi jumped out from her hiding place, ready to settle the score with Yu Qianqiu and demand the authentic animal fencing technique back. She didn't even think about why this technique was called animal fencing. When she found Yu Qianqiu practicing hard in the plantation, Ziyi was dumbfounded. She saw Yu Qianqiu pouncing on its prey like a hungry tiger, and spreading its wings like an eagle. When he released his palms, he was full of vigor, and when he extended his claws, he was cunning and forceful. He was so absorbed in his practice that he didn't even notice her. After looking at it for a long time, it was indeed similar to what was recorded in the Jade Archive. It's true. Purple Robe was speechless. She covered her face and left quietly. She was on the verge of crying. On Obedient Island, she found a rather remote place. She took out the Jade Archive and took a look at the eagle style that Yu Qianqiu was practicing. She memorized the path of circulation. Seeing that there was no one around, she gritted her teeth, spread out her arms, and extended her slender jade-like palms. Dance! Dance, dance! It didn't look like an eagle's claw. It looked more like a chicken's claw, but not really. On Obedient Island, no matter how secluded she was, how could she escape Bai Changchun's discerning eyes? After silently observing for a while, Bai Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged in the big house, shook his head and sighed. Compared to his disciple, Yu Qianqiu, Ziyi's comprehension ability was far inferior. He was afraid that even after a long time of grinding, he still wouldn't be able to grasp the essence of the technique. The more Ziyi practiced, the more uncomfortable she felt. She felt as though she was about to collapse. She thought, why isn't it like what Yu Qianqiu is practicing, where he has both body and spirit? Could it be that Senior Bai is teaching him in secret? That must be it. Otherwise, why would I be inferior to him when everyone is practicing at the same time? This won't do. I must look for Yu Qianqiu to practice with me. If there's anything I don't understand, I'll pester him to teach me. Chapter 450. Xianxian Island was also in the East Sea, but it was very far away. It was located in the middle of the vast sea. Although it was isolated, its name was well known to some people because the owner of the island was one of the 4 great men of the cultivation world, Nanming ancestor. His craftsmanship was extraordinary, and he was the one and only craftsman in the cultivation world. Countless experts in the cultivation world had bent down to beg him for a treasure refined by him. Even the #1 expert in the world, Bai Changchun, was no exception. Between the blue sea and the blue sky, there was a vast continent that was shrouded in white fog all year round. Even the wind could not blow it away. Speaking of the name of this continent, it was more famous in the cultivation world than Xianxian Island. The cultivation world called it the Holy East Land. Because it was not far from the Holy East Land, Xianxian Island was shrouded in white fog all year round. It was difficult to see the whole island clearly. However, it was different from the calm Holy East Land. Shrouded in white fog, Xianxian Island shone with red light all year round, dyeing the white fog red. The sound of metal hitting never stopped. High up in the sky, Nongzhu stood with his arms folded, staring at the endless Holy East Land shrouded in white fog. A rare look of caution appeared on his angular face. Thinking that Bai Changchun might not be able to return after entering this place, he could not help but sigh. Although he understood, he still could not figure out why Bai Changchun had to do this. Was he tired of living? Was it not good to live a carefree life? Why did he have to pursue so many things? Looking at Xianxian Island shrouded in red fog, Nongzhu took out a purple and black bamboo flute. The flute hole was placed horizontally by his lips, and his 10 fingers vibrated. In an instant, the melodious sound of the flute drifted from the blue sky to the vast sea. Not long after, from the red fog below, a deafening roar of a dragon suddenly came. A red light pierced through the red fog and shot toward Nongzhu at an extremely fast speed. Nongzhu put away his flute with a smile. As the red light approached, he saw that it was a huge red flying dragon with a wingspan of nearly 20 meters and a body length of nearly 20 meters. The man and the dragon stopped in the air and stared at each other. The wyvern had a ferocious appearance and a huge body. Sharp claws were spread out under its two strong thighs, and its long tail was swaying gently. A pair of fleshy wings were flapping in the wind, and its whole body was hairless and bright red. It stared at Nongju fiercely with bright eyes and flew higher than Nongju. As it breathed, it spat out provocative flames from time to time. Looking at the man and the dragon, it seemed that this was not the first time they had met. The relationship between the two of them did not seem to be very good. This was the mount of Nanming ancestor, the fire dragon. If Yu Qianqiu saw it, he would definitely be very surprised. This was exactly the same as the dragons in the Western legends in his previous life. Roar! The flying dragon suddenly roared at Nongju. It then spat out a ball of fierce fire towards Nongju. Little bastard, you're so vengeful. You're asking for a beating. Nongju shouted. A transparent protective upstanding qi gushed out, and the fierce flame was not damaged at all. The flute in his hand turned into a huge shadow, and he swung it at the ferocious dragon's head. Bang! After a loud sound, there was a cry of pain. The fire in the wyvern's mouth could no longer be spat out, but its whole body pounced towards Nongju, and its fierce claws went straight for her. Little bastard! Nongju chuckled and teleported away. She stood on the huge head of the wyvern, grabbed the horn on its head with one hand, and hit its head with the flute. Immediately, there was a chaotic roar in the air. The wyvern spun and dived down. It swung its head to both sides, hoping to get rid of Nongju. With Nongju's cultivation, how could she get rid of him? No matter how the angle changed, Nongju stood firmly on the top, and hit the wyvern with the flute in his hand again and again. Suddenly, there was a sudden sound of wind from both sides. The black armor spikes at the end of the two huge fleshy wings fiercely stabbed towards each other. Little bastard, you've learned to play dirty. Sneak attack. Nongju quickly dodged, and once again shot up into the sky. Although the wyvern was huge, its speed was extremely fast, and its strength was also very strong. Ordinary cultivators at the end of the heavens test were no match for it. In addition, its skin was rough, and its flesh was thick, so it was very resistant. The strength of Nongju's flute just now could even collapse a small mountain, but this fellow was not hurt at all. It could be seen how resistant it was. However, it was not that Nongju could not deal with it, and it was not difficult to kill it. The key was that if he killed the mount of Elder Nanming, the old man would definitely fight him to the death. Therefore, he could only teach it a lesson, not kill it. Who bullied my mount? A loud shout came from Xianxian Island, shaking the sky. Hearing this, the wyvern immediately became spirited, and quickly chased up into the sky, as if it would not stop until it was dead. In the sky, Nongju shouted coldly, "Old man Nanming, don't give me that. Don't tell me you don't know who I am. If you don't ask your little bastard to stop, I guarantee that your Xianxian Island will have more meat than you can eat for a month." Immediately, a depressed shout came from below. "Hong Hong, come back." Hearing this, the wyvern roared at Nongju to express its unwillingness, and quickly turned around and rushed back into the red mist. Nongju waved her hand in greeting. The voice came again. "Nongju, what are you doing here?" "Of course I'm looking for you." Nongju smiled and flew down. The person below seemed to remember something unpleasant, and immediately shouted angrily, "Get lost! I don't welcome you here." "Hey, do you think I want to come to this place where even birds don't shit? I was forced to come here under Bai Changchun's orders. Bai Changchun asked you to come find me." After the person below asked, there was no more sound. Nongju passed through the red mist and landed on the island. The entire Xianxian Island was not small, and it was located like a cone. Although it was called an island, it was actually no different from a mountain. The upper half was bare, and there were almost no weeds. There were many holes dug by people. However, the lower half was densely wooded, and it looked verdant. Nongju looked around and suddenly laughed. "Nanming old man, long time no see." She walked towards an old man not far away, wearing only a pair of red underpants. The old man was barefooted, and his face was old, but he had a body full of strong muscles, and his skin was bronze. His face was full of beard, and every strand of hair stood straight, like a hedgehog. The most spectacular thing was that his hair, beard, and eyebrows were all scarlet red, and his underpants were also red. He really looked like a strange person. The red wyvern was sitting obediently behind him. It doesn't matter if we never meet again. Nanming Patriarch snorted. Hey, old man, you're so stingy. Didn't I just eat some of your food? But then again, the seed of your fiery rock vajra tasted really good. It was really a delicacy in the world, and it left an endless aftertaste. Besides, I wasn't the only one who ate it. As Nongju spoke, she licked her lips and looked around, as if she was looking for that fiery rock vajra. When he heard this, Nanming Patriarch's eyes widened, and he suddenly turned around to glare at the wyvern behind him. Although the wyvern was huge, it looked like a child who had done something wrong, and it hung its head down resentfully. If you have anything to say, just say it. I don't have the patience to chat with you. Nanming Patriarch roared. At this moment, a young man and woman walked out of the cave on the island. The woman held a robe in her hands, and the man held a pair of hemp shoes. They helped Nanming Patriarch put them on. Nanming old man, I heard that you took in 2 more disciples. Are they these 2? Nongju looked at the man and woman, and realized that they were quite handsome, much better looking than Nanming Patriarch. She couldn't help but smile and said, I'm Nongju from the South Sea's Purple Bamboo Forest. You 2 juniors can come to my place to play when you're free. My place is much prettier than your Xianxian Island. When the woman saw such a handsome and elegant person like Nongju staring at her, she couldn't help but blush. She looked away shyly, and when she suddenly heard that this person introduced himself as Nongju, she was immediately stunned. She exchanged a glance with the man, and immediately stood behind Nanming ancestor without looking sideways, ignoring Nongju. The 2 of them had heard from their senior brothers and sisters that this person was one of the people their master hated the most. It was said that the fiery rock vajra on the island was laying eggs, and coincidentally Nongju came. When their master wasn't paying attention, this person colluded with the fire dragon to steal and eat the eggs, almost causing the fiery rock vajra on the island to go extinct. After that he ran away, and the fire dragon was severely punished by their master. I say, Nanming old man, why is your disciple as rude as you? He didn't even greet his senior, Nongju said unhappily. Stop talking nonsense. Is it because the flame-deficient profound fruit on Obedient Island has matured? And Bai Changchun sent you to find me? Nanming Patriarch asked as he tidied up his clothes. It seemed that he was ready to go to Obedient Island at any time. Nongju heard this and immediately laughed. Don't mention the flame-deficient profound fruit. Old Bai was too excited and let out a long roar. As a result, the entire Obedient Island was in a mess, and all the flame-deficient profound fruits were destroyed. Bai Changchun was too excited? Nanming Patriarch was stunned. He couldn't understand. For someone like Bai Changchun, his state of mind was as calm as ancient water. It would be difficult for anything to stimulate him. Hee. It's all because of that precious disciple of his. One old and one young, 2 madmen together. They are a perfect match. Nongju said with a wink. Her expression seemed to be telling Nanming Patriarch that he should go and take a look. Is it that person called He Li? Nanming Patriarch was filled with anger just now, but now that Nongju's curiosity was aroused, he couldn't help but ask again. He Li? You still remember him? Nongju paused and shook her head. That guy was too cautious. How could he be qualified to be Old Bai's precious disciple? He was already killed by Old Bai's current disciple. Old Bai's current disciple is incredible. He's a complete troublemaker, but Old Bai still treats him like a treasure. Bai Changchun took in a disciple? Nanming Patriarch was also a little surprised. He then realized that the conversation had gone off topic. He frowned and said, Since the flame-deficient profound fruit has been destroyed, why did he still ask you to find me? My rules can't be broken, or there will be endless trouble. You should go back and ask him to plant the flame-deficient profound fruit again. I won't see you out. He directly asked the guest to leave. Chapter 451. Nongju immediately rolled her eyes and said, Nanming old man, we are friends. You don't have to be so ruthless after eating something from you. Friends. Nanming ancestor snorted. Have you ever seen a friend who steals from a friend? Nongju looked at the two disciples behind him and opened her mouth, speechless. She awkwardly took out the sky-swallowing beast's fang and waved it in her hand. I know your stupid rules. You should also know Old Bai's character. He won't make things difficult for you. What do you think of this? Xianxian Island was a volcanic island, so the temperature where everyone stood was quite high. However, once the black fang was taken out, the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped a few degrees, and an inexplicable eerie feeling rose from Nongju's hand. Nanming ancestor's head, which was looking at the sky, slowly turned around stiffly. His gaze fell on the fang, and his eyes gradually narrowed into a line, unable to move away. Nongju's slightly tense expression relaxed. Her eyebrows twitched, and the corner of her mouth curled into a smile. She was worried that this fellow's standards were too high, and he wouldn't take her seriously. Now it seemed that she could successfully complete Old Bai's task. Can you do it or not? Just say it. If not, I'll leave, lest you roll your eyes at me. Nongju pretended to put away the thing in her hand. Wait. Ancestor Nanming let out a loud cry and snatched the item from Nongju's hand at lightning speed. Once the thing touched his hand, there was a cold and eerie feeling lingering between his fingers. He couldn't help but put it in front of his eyes to observe. It was dark and crooked. From the cross-section of the fracture, it seemed to have been cut from something. It should be a small part of something. I've never seen this material before. What is it? Nanming ancestor stared at the thing in his hand and asked. You're asking me? Nongju pointed at herself and curled her lips. How would I know what it is? If you want to ask, you should ask Old Bai. This thing belongs to him. The yin qi on this thing is bone-piercing, and it doesn't dissipate. It doesn't look like it's acquired. It shouldn't be something from the mortal world. Otherwise, there's no way I wouldn't recognize it. Old ancestor Nanming suddenly raised his head and said, Judging from its appearance, it should be a small part cut off from some huge item. Nongju, tell me honestly, where did you get this thing? No wonder you're a grand master of equipment refining. You can tell the truth at a glance. Nongju gave him a thumbs up, then walked to him and put one hand on his shoulder. Nanming ancestor shook his shoulder abruptly and flung his hand away. He glared at him and shouted, What a scandal it is to have your arms around someone else's shoulder. Nongju looked him up and down and retorted, You are a guy who wears red underpants all year round. How dare you talk about decency with me? If you want to know where this thing came from, hurry up and give me the ear. As he spoke, he placed his arm on Ancestor Nanming's shoulder again. This time, Ancestor Nanming did not resist. This commotion was witnessed by the two disciples, causing them to look at each other in surprise. The two of them faintly felt that their master must have had a close relationship with Mr. Nongju in the past. Otherwise, they wouldn't have acted so intimately. Ninth Netherworld Cave, Nongju said softly with a smile. In fact, he didn't have to do this. If he wanted to whisper, he could just send a voice transmission. However, he thought that taking the opportunity to get closer could more or less repair the relationship between the two of them. He especially wanted to let Nanming Old Ancestor's disciples know that his relationship with their master was not ordinary. In the future, when he came, they must not be impolite. Nanming Ancestor looked at the thing in his hand and shook his head. No wonder, no wonder. Bai Changchun is sitting on a blessed land. Nongju's arm had unknowingly wrapped around his shoulder. The two of them were like good brothers. There were busy disciples going in and out of the cave from time to time on Xianxian Island. Obviously, there were also old people who knew Nongju. After seeing this scene, they were all shocked. It turned out that the relationship between their master and Nongju was still very close. This is nothing. Let me tell you something even more shocking. Nongju touched Nanming Ancestor's bearded old face and pulled his head to her mouth. She whispered into his ear again. You guessed it right. The thing in your hand is indeed not something from the mortal world. It was taken from the netherworld gate of the 9th Netherworld Cave. Do you understand? As she said this, She let go of Nanming Ancestor and patted his broad shoulder heavily. "Ah, from the underworld," Nanming Ancestor exclaimed. But before he could finish, he was interrupted by Nongju. "What are you shouting for? Are you afraid that others won't know? What old Bai took out is not something ordinary people can compare with." That's right, that's right." Nanming Ancestor touched the thing in his hand and nodded. Nongju patted his shoulder again and said proudly, "How about it? Come with me to Shuntian Island. Old Bai still has this thing." "Okay, let me make some preparations." After saying this, Nanming teleported and disappeared, taking the Fong with him. Done. Nongju rubbed her hands in satisfaction. At this time, she was in the mood to look around and found that the surrounding environment had not changed. She looked at the two disciples of Nanming Ancestor, then stared at the flying dragon and said with a smirk, "Little Hong Hong." Just now he called it a little beast, but now he changed it. The flying dragon was also quite intelligent. It turned its huge head to the side and ignored him. Nongju laughed and said, "Forget it, I won't tease you anymore. Go find your master." She teleported and disappeared. The two disciples wanted to say something but stopped. Thinking of Nongju and their master's intimate look, they wanted to shout but did not. Nongju came to a cave and her familiar figure flashed quickly. In the blink of an eye, she arrived at the bottom of the mountain of Xianxian Island. A grand scene of steaming hot air appeared in front of her. In the center was fiery red magma, swallowing and spitting earth fire. The surroundings were filled with the continuous clanking of metal. A large group of people were busy. They were all disciples of Nanming Ancestor, refining weapons with the help of the earth fire. What attracted Nongju's attention the most was the big crab mixed in the crowd. The fiery red crab had a body diameter of 2 meters. It had 4 pairs of strong limbs that were like diamond thorns, supporting its entire body. It was also 2 meters tall. It was waving a pair of giant pincers that were also 2 meters long, hitting the red-hot metal like a hammer. Sparks flew in all directions with great strength. This big crab was called Fiery Rock Vajra. It was the thing that made Nanming Ancestor and Nongju fall out. This creature was quite intelligent and extremely strong. Unlike ordinary crabs, this kind of fiery rock Vajra did not live in the sea. Instead, it lived in volcanic karst caves. It could swim and climb in volcanic magma. It was not afraid of high or low temperatures. It would only come out to hunt for food. The lifespan of cinder-class Vajras was not very long. They could live up to 200 years at most. Female crabs would only lay 10 precious eggs before they died. Therefore, the population of the entire colony had always been stable. It was impossible to increase it even if one wanted to. They were unique to Xianxian Island. Originally, there were about 500 of them. After Nanming Ancestor discovered them, he tamed them for his own use. The main purpose was to make them use their incomparable strength to forge artifacts. Forging artifacts was a hard job. After all, places like Baichangchun's Demon Ghost region with green fire couldn't be everywhere. The extraordinary power of the green fire could melt metal quickly. Then it could be molded and forged at will with a high cultivation base. However, ordinary earth fire did not have that kind of power. Naturally, it had to be forged. Thus fiery rock Vajra came in handy. It saved time and effort when used with people. However, these treasures in Nanming Ancestor's eyes were almost annihilated when they encountered Nongju. The story began when Nanming Ancestor was entangled by cultivators from various countries. At that time, he happened to meet Nongju. Nongju was warm-hearted. In order to help her friend, she invited the world's #1 expert, Baichangchun, to solve the problem for him. Thus, Nongju became Nanming Ancestor's good friend, and often came to Xianxian Island to play. At that time, Nongju was the only person in the cultivation world who could enter and leave Xianxian Island at will. 60 years ago, a batch of fiery rock Vajra had just started laying eggs. The eggs were the size of a fist. They were red and shiny and looked very beautiful. There were only about 100 of them. Nanming Ancestor regarded them as a treasure and sent his mount, a flying dragon, to watch over the incubation. Coincidentally, Nongju came again. Nanming Ancestor spoke out of turn. and said that before he subdued fiery Rakvajra, he had eaten an egg. The taste was simply unparalleled in the world. When Nongju heard this, she immediately became indignant. She pestered Nanming ancestor relentlessly and insisted on having a taste. In the end, old ancestor Nanming was forced into a corner. For the sake of his friend, he endured the pain and gave one to him. After Nongju ate it, he exclaimed that it was delicious. However, this one made him addicted to it, and he could not stop eating it. Later on, no one knew what method he used, but he actually instigated the flying dragon that was guarding the incubation of the crab eggs to steal it. The man and the dragon ate heartily and enjoyed themselves. In reality, Nongju only ate about 7 or 8 of them. The main reason was that the eggs were too big. If she ate too much, she would die. However, the flying dragon liked to eat things of the fire attribute. The fiery Rakvadra's egg was just to its liking. Once it ate it, it could not stop. Needless to say, the big fellow's appetite was almost completely devoured by this silly dragon. After that, the man and the dragon were dumbfounded when they realized that there were no crab eggs left. Needless to say, the consequences were obvious. Nanming ancestor flew into a rage and Nongju hurriedly left. They had not been here for decades. The flying dragon, who could not escape, was in a miserable state. It was almost skinned alive. This was also the reason why the flying dragon immediately took action when it saw Nongju, a fellow who shared blessings with others and was extremely disloyal. At this moment, Nongju felt guilty when she saw the remaining 100 or so fiery Rakvajra. However, when she thought of the delicious crab eggs, it was simply an endless aftertaste. She could not help but secretly look around, not knowing if it was the time for them to lay eggs. Just as she was about to look around, she suddenly heard Nanming ancestor's earth-shaking roar from outside. "Old thief Nongju, why are you not showing yourself? Are you thinking of stealing from my Xianxian island again?" It was followed by the angry roar of the flying dragon. Chapter 452. The 2 words Nongju were famous on Xianxian Island. When Patriarch Nanming roared, the 9 bens and 18 bens gathered below and rumbled, waking everyone up. The busy people at the bottom of the mountain quickly looked around, and their eyes all fell on Nongju. Nongju had many acquaintances here. After all, she used to hang around here often. "Haha, long time no see. You guys are busy." Nongju waved at the crowd with a smile. Just as she turned around, her face darkened, and she quickly ran away. As soon as she came out of the cave, she shouted, "Old Nanming, what are you shouting for? I won't take your scrap metal even if you give it to me." The 2 stood less than half a meter apart. Their eyes met, and sparks flew. Nongju clenched her teeth and stretched out her hand, shouting, "Give me back my things." "When did I take your things?" Ancestor Nanming spat. Nongju wiped the saliva off her face and said, "Old Bai asked me to bring them. You took them just now. Bai Changchun gave it to me. You're just a messenger. Since when did it become yours?" Nanming Grand Elder wiped the saliva off his face as well. He turned around and shouted at the flying dragon, "Let's go." The flying dragon shot up into the sky. Ancestor Nanming caught up with it and landed firmly on the dragon's back. The flying dragon quickly passed through the fog. Nongju leaped into the air and caught up to him. She stood side by side with Nanming ancestor without hesitation. Both of them let out a cold snort at the same time. The flying dragon was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a black dot in the distant sky, crossing the vast demon ghost region. Nongju and ancestor Nanming rode on the flying dragon and arrived at the sky above Shantian Island. Bai Changchun's voice rang in the sky. "Nanming, my brother, you have graced my Shantian Island with your presence." As he spoke, Bai Changchun's thin and elegant figure appeared outside the big house. An expert came to greet them personally. 2 figures flashed down. Ancestor Nanming cupped his hands and bowed. "I dare not." His temper could be considered bad in the cultivation world, but when he saw Bai Changchun, he still performed the basic etiquette properly. He did not dare to be presumptuous in front of the world's #1 expert. Nongju looked at the direction of the plantation suspiciously and asked, "Old Bai, what happened to Ze?" When he was still in the air, He saw Ze baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, jumping and jumping like a madman. Bai Changchun ignored him and waved at Nanming ancestor. Please come in. Grandmaster Nanming expressed his gratitude. He raised his head and shouted at the flying dragon. Find a place and stay obediently. Don't disturb the peace of Obedient Island. Then he entered the house with Bai Changchun. The dragon in the sky let out a low roar, turned around, and obediently landed in a corner of the Obedient Island. Nongzhu, on the other hand, teleported to the abandoned plantation. She saw that Ze had been doing strange things. She did not even notice that he was standing beside her for a long time. She was tormented until she was drenched in sweat. Nongzhu was startled and asked, Ze, what are you doing? Ze suddenly stopped. When she turned around and saw it was her master, she immediately burst into tears. She threw herself into Nongzhu's arms and cried her heart out. Nongzhu's heart suddenly tightened. He patted his daughter's shoulder and comforted her. Ze, what's wrong? Did someone bully you? You Qianqiu, he. Ze choked with sobs. Nongzhu's eyes widened and he shouted angrily. You Qianqiu, you son of a b***tch, how dare you bully Ze? Get out of here. This shout was no less than a sudden clap of thunder. It immediately provoked Bai Changchun's sonorous rebuke. Nongzhu, what do you want? Although his voice was not as loud as Nongzhu's, the sonorous demon-subduing power hit Nongzhu without missing a single word, shaking people's hearts. Ancestor Nanming, who was sitting cross-legged with Bai Changchun in the house, suddenly felt happy in his heart. He casually said, This guy is not a good guy. As soon as he finished his words, even he found that he was a little suspicious of fanning the flames. He immediately changed his words. Who is Yu Qianqiu? It is my disciple's name, Bai Changchun said in a tone that hid some complacency. Ancestor Nanming made a long, oh sound, but he remembered this name in his heart. A disciple who could make Bai Changchun proud must be an extraordinary person. He nodded and said, Brother Bai's disciple must be a talent. I would like to see it. Haha. Brother Nanming, you are a little late. My disciple has already left a day earlier. Bai Changchun said with a smile. Ze, who was at the plantation, stopped crying when she heard Bai Changchun's anger. She pulled Nongzhu, whose face was pale, and said, Master, he did not bully me. Did he say that I am stupid? Nongzhu said angrily. How can my disciple be stupid? No matter how stupid she is still smarter than him. Her expression suddenly became distorted. She turned her head and asked, He only said that you are stupid, and you cried like this? Ze hung her head and said sadly, Senior Bai taught us the same incantation. My speed of understanding is indeed not as fast as his, so I begged him to teach me. In the end, not long after teaching, he said that he could not stand me. He said that I was too stupid to be carved, so he left me alone and left the demon region. Nongzhu was stunned when she heard this. She was happy and worried at the same time. She was happy because Bai Changchun was really generous and really taught her daughter the incantation. She was worried because she felt that her daughter was a little dependent on Yu Qianqiu. This was a bad omen. He looked at that calm and gentle face, and was unwilling to shift his gaze away for a long time. The moment he saw her, he felt his entire body and mind completely relax. At this moment he was his true self. It was like this every time. He was influenced by her, and became like her, without any desires. She did not have any requests for him, nor did she have any ties to him. She would not even throw a tantrum with him. There was only understanding and support without any reservations. Everything was done in silence, and she would never have any regrets. I really want to keep this sword, but I know you won't be happy. My heart hurts to have you suffer like this. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have given this sword to you. Yu Qianqiu looked at the green destiny sword on the bed and shook his head with a bitter smile. Since you know I won't be happy, then don't mention it again. Bai Suzhen said softly. She looked at him from head to toe and frowned. Why are there so many mud on your body? I've been practicing a martial art recently. It's all because of the hard work. Yu Qianqiu recalled the process of practicing the animal fencing, and had a helpless expression. It seemed like he had not felt any effects until now. Change into another one. Otherwise your parents and Ping will be worried. As Bai Suzhen spoke, she had already leaned over and reached out to help him remove his outer clothes. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu took out a new set of clothes from his storage bag. After removing the dirty clothes, Bai Suzhen took the clothes from his hands and helped him change. After that, both of them had a knowing smile on their faces. Yu Qianqiu opened his arms and said, "Let me hug you." Bai Suzhen looked at him and tilted her head. She raised her hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She smiled faintly and leaned into his embrace. Yu Qianqiu gently pulled her into his embrace and buried his head in her hair. He sniffed the faint fragrance and murmured, "I want to jump out of China's cultivation world and travel around." Bai Suzhen felt his heartbeat and had a faint sense of satisfaction on her face. She asked softly, "Do you need me to do anything? As long as I can see you every time I come back, I will have endless motivation outside. This is more important than anything you do." Yu Qianqiu turned his head and said with a little enchantment. Bai Suzhen raised her head and said, "I've already helped your parents consume the 7 orifices exquisite pill. It seems to be quite effective. Go and take a look." "Got it." Yu Qianqiu grunted and suddenly asked softly, "You seem to have delegated all the power of Ethereal Palace to Ping." Yes. Is there a problem?" Bai Suzhen asked. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and did not say anything. Chapter 453. The two of them walked out of Ethereal Palace side by side. Their temperaments reflected each other, and the palace maids they encountered bowed to them. To them, their leader's status in Utopia was needless to say. As for Sister Bai, who lived in seclusion, be it in terms of temperament or appearance, she was unique in Utopia. Her clothes were as white as snow all year round, and she was as elegant as a snow lotus on an iceberg. Although Sister Bai didn't interfere with anything in Ethereal Palace or Utopia, she controlled the lifeline of the entire Utopia. Everyone's primordial spirits were in her hands. Even Chief Instructor Guan, who controlled the entire Utopia military, would come to greet her from time to time. That respectful attitude was something he didn't have even when he met the current person in charge of Ethereal Palace, Chu Ping. There was also Chief Qin, who was usually sparse. When he saw the gentle Sister Bai, he was also very respectful. Once Sister Bai instructed him to do something, he would definitely not hesitate, and would not dare to give her any discount. As such, even though Big Sister Bai was tolerant, the people in Utopia who saw her were all filled with respect and fear. The two of them stood in front of the cliff outside Ethereal Palace for a while, and chatted for a while before Bai Suzhen left quietly. Not long after, a stream of light streaked over. Chu Ping, put away her flying sword in surprise and landed. She punched Yu Qianqiu's chest and said coquettishly, "Why did you only come back once after so long?" Now on Chu Pinger's face, the haze of the past could no longer be seen. Instead, it was shrouded in bright and vibrant colors, and the way she spoke was more confident. A faint aura of a superior had begun to appear, and she had the image of a strong woman. Needless to say, she was now the master of hundreds of people in Ethereal Palace. Compared to Wang Kuangsung's disciple who could be ordered around, her situation was worlds apart. Now that the entire Utopia knew that she was Yu Qianqiu's woman, no one dared to criticize her. She was the only one who could criticize others. She was very busy every day. Yu Qianqiu grabbed her fist and pulled it into his embrace. He said with a naughty smile, "Did you miss me? Tsk. Your body has become even more voluptuous." Annoying. Chu Pinger shyly raised her other fist and punched him twice, causing Yu Qianqiu to laugh weirdly and grope her all over. Chu Pinger's face was flushed red. She pushed him away weakly and said, "There's something I need to tell you. Your parents aren't used to living in the Misty Palace, so they moved to Dongguasu's place. I'll accompany you to see them now. There's no need to rush. Let me examine you first." Yu Qianqiu lifted her up forcefully, causing a burst of exclamations. Then the two of them disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already at the lakeside where the two of them first made love. Then, their clothes fluttered in the wind and water splashed everywhere. What a pair of mandarin ducks playing in the water. Now Dong Guosu also had hundreds of people under him. Planting and breeding went hand in hand, solving the logistics and food supply of the entire utopia. This piece of land was flourishing. When Chu Ping'er and Yu Qianqiu arrived, they immediately found Yu Changgui and his wife. The two of them were in much better spirits than when they were in the Misty Palace. After careful observation, Yu Qianqiu realized that ordinary mortals would look lethargic when they were over 50 years old. It was a sign that their bodies were failing. Now that his parents' faces were completely devoid of lethargy, it was clear that the elixir had taken effect. This made Yu Qianqiu feel gratified. It should not be a problem for his parents to live for another 50 years. When they met, the family naturally had endless things to talk about. Yu Qianqiu decided to accompany his parents for the entire day. Chu Ping'er temporarily put down her miscellaneous items and acted like a good daughter-in-law. Xue Ernyang was naturally happy, but she was filled with complaints that her daughter-in-law's stomach was not big. Chu Ping'er was extremely shy. From time to time, she would secretly glare at Yu Qianqiu, but the latter pretended not to see her. The next day, Yu Qianqiu ordered someone to bring him a large pile of spiritual herbs in the Utopia military camp. Then he personally refined a large pile of elixirs. He opened his hands and green flames appeared on his palms. At the same time he cultivated. Guan Yu only needed to be in charge of throwing in the spiritual herbs. His skilled alchemy skills were like child's play, shocking Guan Yu once again. He was indeed much better than the arrogant Chen Feng. When the two of them placed the elixirs into bottles, Guan Yu asked, "What elixirs are you refining?" "Or concealing elixir. Consuming one can prevent others from seeing through one's cultivation level for 10 days. In the past, I didn't have all the ingredients, but now that I have everything, I naturally have to refine more in one go. Although this thing isn't very effective, it's useful," Yu Qianqiu said as he filled the bottles. Guan Yu picked up a small yellow elixir and looked at it. He did not expect such a magical elixir to exist. He asked curiously, "Your body's talent is abnormal. Others can't see through your cultivation level. Who are you giving so many elixirs to?" He guessed that Yu Qianqiu was going to bring another batch of people out. Yu Qianqiu put away the large pile of bottles in front of the two of them. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the pile of yellow elixirs left on the table. He smiled and said, "The Chinese cultivation world is too tense these days. It makes people feel like they don't know where to start. I'm going to go to other countries." Guan Yu was silent for a while and said, "How many people do you need this time?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, "For the time being, there is no need to use a large number of special forces. You just need to focus on training them. When I have a clear understanding of the situation, I will naturally use them. By the way, help me call Hongqi and the other two over. Their cultivation has already reached the early stage of the tribulation passing stage. It's time for them to go out and gain experience." Guan Yu nodded and went out. Not long after, he brought back 3 guys in ragged clothes covered in blood. When the 3 saw Yu Qianqiu, they hurriedly bowed. After carefully looking at the 3 people, Yu Qianqiu nodded in satisfaction. The 3 guys had obviously just come down from the actual combat training. From their sorry appearance, it seemed like they had been tossed around quite a bit. The killing intent that had not yet dispersed from the 3 of them was obvious. Even the young boy, Hongqi, had a murderous look on his face. He looked like a hungry wolf that had just been released from its cage. "I'll give you a quarter of an hour. Wash up and change your clothes before coming to see me." Yu Qianqiu lightly waved his hand and said. The 3 of them accepted the order and quickly left. Not even a quarter of an hour later, the 3 of them rushed back. After going through training, their behavior was really different. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the pile of elixirs on the table and said, "These are breath-concealing elixirs. After taking one, no one will be able to tell that you are a cultivator for 10 days. Each of you fill up 10 bottles and bring them with you. They will be useful when you go out." "He wants to bring us out?" The 3 of them were stunned. They looked at each other, and did not dare to say anything. They quickly filled the bottles according to Yu Qianqiu's instructions. Each bottle could contain about 100 elixirs. 10 bottles would be more than 1,000 elixirs. As Yu Qianqiu looked at them, he said, "When you go out this time, Hongqi and Gu Qingyan will be traveling as itinerant cultivators in China's cultivation world. Remember to change your name so that no one can recognize you. I'll give each of you 30 Special Forces members. Remember to keep a low profile. Otherwise, with your strength, you won't be able to fight those large sections." After the three of them packed the elixirs, Hongqi asked excitedly, "Master, what do we need to do when we go out?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes at him and pretended to be angry. "Of course, I'm not asking you to go sightseeing. You have a mission this time. I'll give you and Gu Qingyan a year. Each of you has to bring back 100 million superior-grade spirit stones. I don't care if you steal or snatch it." In any case, if you can't complete the mission, I'll punish you severely. Yes. The two of them accepted the order happily. The two of them also knew that Utopia had never let anyone go out to train alone. Such an opportunity was not given to just anyone, and the significance was extraordinary. However, when they thought about how they had to bring back 100 million superior-grade spirit stones each year, they still felt extremely pressured. "Master, what should I do?" Zhang Ping asked with a loud voice. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the tower-like man and asked, "I heard that when you were fighting in the past, you sent out spies to spy on the military. Their disguises are pretty good. I wonder if you know how to do it." "This is a meticulous job. I don't know how to do it, but the general has many capable people under him," Zhang Peng replied. The general he was referring to was naturally the National Pillar General, Shi Wenguang. "Got it." Yu Qianqiu nodded and looked at the three of them. "I'll give you a day to prepare. If you want people, look for Chief Instructor Guan. If you want things, look for Chief Chen. At this time tomorrow, bring your people and things here to meet me." "Yes." The three of them cupped their fists excitedly and accepted the order. After the three of them left, Guan Yu frowned and said, "Isn't it a little too dangerous to bring back 100 million for each of them? Especially Hongqi. He has never seen much of the world. Can he do it?" If you want to survive in the cultivation world, danger is a common thing. How can you be afraid? I've already created certain conditions for them. If they can't even protect their own lives, then they're just trash. If they die, then so be it. I'll replace them as soon as possible." Yu Qianqiu said faintly and disappeared. Guan Yu was left alone with a frown. He knew that Yu Qianqiu was starting to train people who could stand on their own in the outside world. Hongqi had finally obtained some free time with great difficulty, and as soon as he left the barracks, he swiftly flew to Dong Guosu's side to see his maternal grandparents. The old couple, who were busy at the edge of the farmland, saw someone flying towards them. At first, they thought they had seen the wrong person. When they realized it was their grandson, they were dumbfounded. Their grandson was not even 20 years old. How could he have reached the early stage of the tribulation passing stage? After asking and getting confirmation, the old couple was so excited that they were speechless. They thanked Yu Qianqiu profusely. Hongqi had come to bid farewell to his grandparents. He said that his master wanted him to go out and gain experience. Dong Guosu immediately reminded him, "Your master has given our family a new lease of life. It's hard to repay him even if you have to risk your life. In short, as long as it's something your master wants you to do, even if you have to risk your life." "I don't know when I'll be back. Grandpa and Grandma, please take care. I still have something to do. I'll bid farewell now," Hongqi said as he knelt down and kowtowed. Good. The old couple helped him up emotionally. Hongqi stepped back and bowed. Then he bounced up and flew away. The old couple stared at him for a long time. They could never reach such a cultivation level in their entire lives. Now that they saw it on their grandson, how could they not be excited? More than 10 people came from all around the farmland. They surrounded the old couple and asked, "This is your grandson? This is the direct disciple of the leader." The old couple's faces were full of pride, but they still spoke modestly. After dealing with the people, The old couple immediately decided to visit Yu Changgui and his wife to see if they needed any help. Chapter 454. In the backyard of the pillar of the State General's estate, Yu Qianqiu reclined on a wooden armchair, munching on snacks and sipping tea. After waiting for some time, Shi Xiaotian excitedly returned with a few letters and placed them on the table. Yu Qianqiu was going to the Western military camp, so he wanted to deliver a letter to Shi Xiaotian's family. In fact, the Shi family had never stopped sending letters to the Western military camp. However, they didn't dare to write anything too profound. After all, the supervisory department of a country wasn't just a nobody, especially when it came to a general like Shi Wenguang who had a powerful army. Yu Qianqiu finished the last melon seed in his mouth, then clapped his hands and took out a jade archive. He placed it on the table and said, "The things inside are beneficial to you. I'll be taking my leave first." He then stood up and kept the letters on the table. Shi Xiaotian smiled bitterly and said, "Boss, if you have nothing to do, come often." Unfortunately, his boss was nowhere to be seen. In the Western military camp, the army was training hard. Their shouts shook the heavens as they prepared for war. Sitting in the middle of the camp was a large tent. Loud laughter could be heard, and the atmosphere was very lively. Shi Wenguang sat behind his desk, toasting with the 4 sword-bearing cultivators who sat on either side of him. The topic of their conversation was none other than Yu Qianqiu. Several guards in the tent were also listening attentively. They were none other than the people Yu Qianqiu had sent to protect Shi Wenguang. As they were listening, they suddenly realized that someone else had appeared beside them. They were shocked and were about to make a move, but they saw that it was Yu Qianqiu. Just as they were about to greet him, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, signaling for them to be quiet. He then crossed his arms and continued listening to the conversation outside. Outside the tent, Shi Wenguang held a cup in his left hand and made an inviting gesture with his right. He smiled and said, "Immortal Li, Immortal Zhao, Immortal Qiu, and Immortal Wu. I am very grateful that the 4 of you can come and talk about interesting things in the cultivation world with me. Come, let's have another toast, Immortal Masters." "General, you're too polite." Immortal Master Li wiped his mouth and asked with a smile, "Why is the general so interested in Yu Qianqiu? Every time we come, the general always asks about Yu Qianqiu. Could it be that the general has some relationship with Yu Qianqiu?" Immortal Master Li must be joking. Although I have a large army under my command, I'm just an ordinary man. How could I have any relationship with Yu Qianqiu? I'm afraid that even if I wanted to climb up the social ladder, he wouldn't be interested in an ordinary man like me. Shi Wenguang laughed heartily. "General, there's no need to belittle yourself. You're a high-ranking official in the secular world. How can you be compared to the cultivation world? Not to mention the fact that Yu Qianqiu is a general. Even if we wanted to curry favor with him, I'm afraid he wouldn't even look us in the eye." Immortal Master Wu shook his head and sighed. Shi Wenguang waved his hand and said, "Immortal Master Wu must be joking. You 4 immortal masters are experts who can fly in the sky and travel through the earth. Anyone would look favorably upon you. If I were to guess, you immortal masters are just unwilling to get involved in the struggles of the cultivation world. Brother Wu, you must have drunk too much. That Yu Qianqiu is just a scum who was expelled from the sect twice. Why should we let him look us in the eye?" Immortal Master Zhao's expression was a little unhappy. The 4 of them relied on their status in the cultivation world to interact with the Pillar of State General, and often came here to eat and drink for free. How could they say such demeaning words? Wouldn't that be a great loss of face? The guards in the tent all looked at Yu Qianqiu. They only saw a faint smile on Yu Qianqiu's face. He remained unmoved and closed his eyes to listen. No one knew what he was thinking. Shi Wenguang's expression stiffened. He naturally knew that the guards in the tent were sent by Yu Qianqiu. He really didn't know how they would react after hearing this. After waiting for a while, Shi Wenguang raised his cup and smiled. "Immortal Masters, please don't stop. Let's drink." After they drank, Immortal Master Qiu asked the others, "Have you heard? It's said that Yu Qianqiu led 600 experts and fought with the Deluo sect in Wanghai town. I wonder if it's true?" The guards in the tent looked at the person in question in surprise. A cold smile appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face. He thought to himself, "And here I thought it was some bullshit Immortal Master. If they can't even figure out this kind of thing, then it goes without saying that they're all useless people. That madman is capable of anything." Immortal Master Li shook his head. Shi Wenguang immediately became spirited. He straightened his back and asked, "Immortal Masters, can you tell me in detail what happened?" Immortal Master Wu smiled bitterly and said, "I have heard of this matter. Yu Qianqiu led more than 600 people and fought with the Deluo sect's 1,000 people in front of all the sections. It was an intense battle to the death." "What was the result?" everyone asked in unison. "The result is unbelievable." Immortal Master Wu shook his head. The Deluo sect, ranked second among the righteous sects, suffered a crushing defeat. Only a few dozen of their 1,000 people were left. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu only lost 200 people. The most shocking thing was that Yu Qianqiu was able to fight against 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts by himself. In the end, it was the 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts who suffered a loss. Hiss! Everyone gasped. They didn't care about the 1,000 people who died. What they cared about the most was the fact that Yu Qianqiu defeated 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts by himself. For them, late-stage tribulation transcendence experts were the pinnacle of experts. Immortal Master Zhao, who previously ridiculed Yu Qianqiu, twitched and asked, "Brother Wu, is this news fake?" "It can't be fake. I heard it personally from a disciple of the Deluo sect. He wouldn't fabricate a scandal about our sect." Immortal Master Wu said with a breath that reeked of alcohol. The scene immediately became silent. Shi Wenguang's eyes flickered with excitement. Yu Qianqiu didn't lie to him. Since he had the ability to fight against the Deluo sect, it was only a matter of time before something big happened. He immediately raised his cup and said, "Immortal Masters, please." Then he drank the cup to show his respect. Immortal Master Zhao clearly felt that he had lost face. After putting down his cup, he snorted and said, "I think this news is probably fake. Think about it. I heard that Yu Qianqiu is only at the nascent soul stage. How could he defeat 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts from the Deluo sect by himself?" Everyone looked at each other. After all, they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, so it was hard to say. Even if they said it was fake, they had heard many people talking about it. If they said it was true, it was indeed unimaginable. What if it's true? Someone in the tent suddenly laughed. Shi Wenguang was slightly surprised. This person's voice was too familiar. Sure enough, Yu Qianqiu lifted the curtain and slowly walked out. He secretly gave Shi Wenguang, who was about to speak, a look to indicate that he should not speak. He stood beside Shi Wenguang and cupped his hands towards the people below. "I am a cousin of the great general. I heard Immortal Masters talking about it, and couldn't help but come out to join in the fun. I hope Immortal Masters won't mind." As he spoke, he looked at the people around him. They were only at the foundation establishment stage, yet they dared to come to his territory and pretend to be experts. They simply didn't know what was good for them. The 4 people looked at Shi Wenguang in confusion. The latter nodded and said with a smile, "Immortal Masters, please don't be suspicious. He is indeed my cousin." Hearing this, the people around him relaxed. What? The great general's cousin is also interested in the matters of the cultivation world? Immortal Master Zhao shook his head and said, "Then let me test you. Do you know how many sects there are in the cultivation world? How many righteous sects and how many demonic sects?" "There should be at least a few hundred," Yu Qianqiu said after thinking for a moment. He discovered that up until now, he really couldn't figure out how many sects there were in the cultivation world. Yes. Immortal Master Zhao shook his head. He was very dissatisfied with his vague answer. He then asked, "Then do you know how many loose cultivators there are in the cultivation world?" The other 3 Immortal Masters also looked at Yu Qianqiu with smiles. It seemed that they were bored drinking and wanted to use the great general's cousin to liven things up. Damn it. These questions really stump me. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "Nowadays, there aren't many loose cultivators in the cultivation world who are presentable. I don't care how many there are." As soon as he said this, the four Immortal Masters' expressions immediately changed. Immortal Master Zhao slammed his wine cup on the table and shouted angrily, "Little brat, you're making irresponsible remarks. If it wasn't for the great general's face, I'd definitely teach you a lesson today." Shi Wenguang, who was sitting in the middle, was speechless. You guys talked about Yu Qianqiu for half a day. Now Yu Qianqiu is standing in front of you, but none of you know him. I wonder who was it that said he was someone who drank with Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said, "What? Are you Immortal Masters also loose cultivators?" Immortal Master Zhao said loudly, "That's right. We four are loose cultivators in the cultivation world. Although we don't join any sects, we are still free and unfettered. The cultivation world is filled with loose cultivators. It can be said that there are hidden dragons and crouching tigers. There are countless experts. How can an ordinary person like you know about them?" Immortal Master Li reprimanded. Immortal Master Wu and Immortal Master Qiu looked at each other and felt that something was wrong. This kid was so rude in front of them. How could Shi Wenguang not care? Immortal Master Wu then asked in a probing tone, "Little brother, from what you said, do you know loose cultivators in the cultivation world?" "I do know a few," Yu Qianqiu added in his heart. "I've already killed all those I know." After thinking for a moment, he said, "Oh, that's right, I know someone called Hong Ming. His cultivation is not bad among loose cultivators, barely reaching the early stage of tribulation passing. He was the one who told me about how few rogue cultivators are presentable. I wonder if the four Immortal Masters know him?" This was the only name he could think of. Back when the rogue cultivators pushed him to be the representative, the bearded man named Hong Ming was his staunch supporter. Unfortunately, he was accidentally killed by him. Hong Ming? The four Immortal Masters were speechless. Hong Ming may not be much in Yu Qianqiu's eyes, but he was one of the top figures among loose cultivators. He was not someone the four of them could come into contact with. Shi Wenguang glanced at Yu Qianqiu. Seeing that he was still humbly asking for advice, he felt a chill in his heart. This guy was clearly trying to mess with them. Forget it, it's not his turn to speak. I might as well drink my own wine. The four of them looked at each other. Immortal Master Zhao asked with a guilty conscience, "Little brother, what is your relationship with Hong Ming?" He had already changed the way he addressed him from a yellow-haired kid to a little brother. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.